Let me now move on to Vishnu Reddy.
Great, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great. My name is Vishnu Reddy and I live in Sunnyside, Queens. I'm here to express my unequivocal support for the City of Yes for housing opportunity. In my neighborhood of Sunnyside, asking rents have skyrocketed over the last few years, and this story has repeated itself all over the city. And it's because our city and our region is facing a dire housing shortage that is decades in the making. The runaway increases in housing costs this shortage has caused has harmed all but the most wealthy of New Yorkers, and especially the most vulnerable. We don't have to live like this, and it's time we do something about it. I want to live in a city that welcomes people seeking abortion in the post-Roe era. I want to live in a city where queer folks can come to find safety and community. I want to live in a city that gives hope to immigrants seeking opportunity and a better life. We cannot have that city if only the wealthy can afford to live here. New York has long had a reputation as a safe harbor for the most vulnerable people seeking a better future. With the way the housing shortage is going, we're quickly losing that reputation and we must take action. I also want to emphasize that City of Yes is just a start. This proposal is a great step in the right direction, but it's not nearly enough to fill the gaps caused by decades of underbuilding. We need the city to continue to encourage the creation of more homes. We also need help from Albany to help fund affordable housing and to make sure the suburbs are pulling their weight when it comes to housing creation. The City of Yes is a great step forward, and I can't wait to see what else we can do to get out of this mess. I'm really grateful for the thankless work from the staff at City Planning for seeing this through and for the hard work being done by organizers all across the city to advocate for a more livable and affordable New York. I'm also especially impressed by commissioners here today, and I appreciate you all for sticking it out. Thank you for your time.
Great, thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Reddy. Okay, let me move on to Pablo Zevallos on Zoom.
Pablo, you should be able to unmute in Zoom.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Pablo Zevallos, and I'm a tenants' rights attorney and Democratic district leader on the Upper West Side. I'm testifying in support of City of Yes for housing opportunity, a key building block toward advancing affordable and fair housing in this city. New York City is in the throes of a housing shortage, but it does not affect us all equally. The vacancy rate for apartments with asking rents of under $2,400 is less than 0.7%. Accompanying this shortage is persistently high rent burdens and overcrowding for families with children. The pervasive unavailability of lower rent housing is most punishing for the lowest income households, especially the nearly 150,000 New Yorkers in shelter looking for homes. More broadly, development is concentrated in majority Black and Latino communities. The 10 council districts with the highest number of new construction affordable housing units are, on average, over 70% Black and Latino. This concentration contributes towards segregated living patterns and has reduced the ability of housing lottery applicants to have meaningful neighborhood choice. The policies contained within City of Yes for housing opportunity would facilitate increased construction for affordable housing and combat enduring exclusionary zoning practices. Enacting UAP with income averaging and making the deep affordability MIH option independently available to DCP would offer lower income households greater housing opportunities, particularly in well-resourced neighborhoods throughout the city. Legalizing ADUs offers possibilities from facilitating intergenerational wealth, to permitting older adults to age in place, to creating new rental opportunities where none might otherwise exist, to safely legalizing existing basement apartments. Lifting restrictions on building SROs would help provide permanent housing opportunities, particularly for supportive housing. New measures like transit-oriented development and town center zoning would add badly needed missing middle housing. And ending required parking mandates would remove spatial and cost barriers to these goals. The lowest income New Yorkers cannot wait any longer as they bear the biggest brunt of our city's housing shortage. Passing these amendments to the zoning resolution would make affordable housing more widely available, and more communities would be doing their part to help end this crisis. If this commission passes these amendments to the zoning resolution, it'll be set a precedent for future iterations of city government to be moved to do the same. I hope the commission votes to approve these amendments. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Zavallos. Appreciate it. Okay, let's go to Sarah Pennenberg on Zoom.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Pennenberg, and I am a political coordinator at SEIU Local 32BJ, and I will be reading this testimony on behalf of our 32BJ president, Manny Pashreik. 32BJ is the largest union of property service workers in the country, representing over 170,000 members across 13 states, including 85 in New York. Our union is here today in support of City of Yes for Housing Opportunity Zoning Text Amendment. 32BJ members are the backbone of the New York residential sector. We are doormen, porters, handy persons, superintendent, and other essential workers upon whose owners and tenants rely to keep the building safe, clean, and running. 32BJ has fought hard for many decades to raise the standards for city property service workers, and yet our members, like so many other New Yorkers, struggle to keep up with the skyrocketing rents and to find affordable housing opportunities in the city. We recognize that the housing crisis experienced by 32BJ members is a result of decades of unproductive, simply put, the city is not building enough housing to keep the pace of the population and job growth, generating an estimated 500,000 unit shortfall. To address this shortage, our leaders and policymakers must refine and use every tool available, which is why earlier this year, 32BJ supported a suite of state legislation designed to revitalize affordable housing production in New York. We believe that City of Yes for Housing Opportunity answers the same call. 32BJ strongly supports the City of Yes proposal to unlock new affordable housing through the Universal Affordability Preference Density Bonus, to reimagine underutilized commercial buildings by facilitating more office to residential conversions, to allow modern density multifamily projects in more areas of the city, including transit-rich neighborhoods, and to remove experience restrictions to new residential developments across the city. At the same time, we look forward to learning more about how City of Yes as a proposal will impact existing affordable housing programs and pipelines. The scale and urgency of the housing crisis demands policy intervention like this proposal. 32BJ looks forward to working with the city to pass City of Yes housing opportunity and to ensure that all workers who want to call New York home are able to do so. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Ms. Pennenberg. Thank you for that testimony. Really appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to Olivia Killingsworth on Zoom, followed by Aaron Kaufman on Zoom, followed by Amit Solomon on Zoom.
Hi, I'm Olivia Killingsworth. I'm a New Yorker for 17 years and a member of Open New York. But I'm here today because I'm a professional actor, a 19-year member of both Actors Equity and SAG-AFTRA. I proudly served as a strike captain on the picket lines last year. And although I've been lucky enough to receive a small, unexpected inheritance that recently enabled me to become a homeowner in South Brooklyn, I've spent most of my life, my time in the city, struggling to afford housing. I know most of my fellow artists and creative professionals have too, unless they come from extreme privilege or happen to get lucky like I did. And so that's why I'm really excited about the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity initiative. I really hope that the Planning Commission approves this proposal in its strongest possible form so that we can provide new opportunities for New Yorkers to live in more types of housing, especially young artists just starting out. I can't tell you the number of times I've spoken with younger actors these days, and I've had to advise them that they may want to start out in a cheaper place first, or consider commuting in from New Jersey or Pennsylvania until they're more established because the rent is so high here. This is a serious problem for the vibrancy of our city. I mean, if we can't welcome a new generation of creative workers, then all the innovation, it just happens elsewhere and it gets imported. And then we miss out on that unique homegrown New York flavor that has run through so much of the greatest works of American arts and culture over the past few centuries. I especially want to focus on the provisions to allow shared housing and SROs, or single room occupancy units. I understand apartments with shared kitchens and bathrooms aren't for everyone, but this kind of housing can be a real boon for people just starting out. In the 60s, we made SROs illegal because we thought it would push out the low-income people who lived in those types of apartments. That didn't work. It was immoral and dumb, and we ended up with a homelessness crisis and rising costs for everyone. And I can say from personal experience, having lived in a building full of micro apartments for both low-income artists and folks transitioning out of homelessness, it's transformational. Just knowing that you have a home that's all your own, a refuge to come back to after a long day at auditions, classes, rehearsals, and shifts waiting tables, and it's not eating up more than half of your paycheck. It's not a huge albatross hanging around your neck that only adds to your anxiety and your worry. Even if it's small and it only has like a 2-burner stove and a mini fridge, it's life-changing. And in some cases, it can be life-saving. So I urge you to approve the City of Yes for housing. It's the right thing to do for our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Killingsworth. Really appreciate that. I mean, we talk a lot about the economic impact of lack of housing, but certainly your point about the impact on the creative sector and our cultural economy is really, really important, and the ability to allow people to come to New York, to innovate, to take some risks, to try something new, and to have that opportunity is something that is certainly central to all this. So thank you very much for making that point. Okay, let's go to Aaron Kaufman.
Aaron Kaufman is not in the Zoom.
How about Amit Solomon?
Amit Solomon is not in the Zoom.
Nicole Young?
Nicole is here and we're promoting.
Great, followed by Lo Vandervalk.
Nicole, you should be able to turn on your microphone. Oh, I believe Nicole is rejoining as a panelist.
Can you hear me?
You can.
Okay.
I think we may have lost Nicole, but I believe Lo is available.
Okay, let's take Lo, and we'll keep going.
Can you hear me?
We can. Hello, Lo.
Okay. Okay, Dan. Thank you. My name is Lo Vandervalk, and I am representing the views of Carnegie Hill neighbors with its catchment area located in the Upper East Side of Manhattan. We thank you, Chair Garodnick, for this opportunity to address the Commission on this urgent topic. We support its goals of increasing affordable housing, but we have some specific concerns. I will touch on some of these. Regarding the Madison Avenue Special Preservation District, this special district was one of the first created back in 1973, and this commission, recognizing that a historic district would not be granted at that time, instead created this special district. It added the word preservation in its name to emphasize its special character. The commission recognized the iconic status of Madison Avenue as a world-class shopping street. We think that the custom bulk regulations should be kept. Regarding protection of the mid-blocks. First, in terms of RB8, this proposal will allow an increase in height from 75 to 105 feet, provided affordable housing is created. We think this height increase is too great. It would alter the character of the mid-block. Second, we understand that the required minimum rear yards will be allowed to be shortened from 30 to 20 feet. We think this will have a serious detrimental impact on the green donut spaces in the mid-lots. Third, rear yards will be allowed to be completely covered to a height of 15 feet for non-dwelling residential uses in the admittedly special cases of multiple dwellings. But we still oppose this. Note, the appropriate place we feel for increased bulk and height are the avenues, especially the avenue corners, and we would support that. Regarding the increase and comprehensive reliance on authorizations by CPC, rather than the existing system of permits requiring, in many cases, public reviews such as Euler, we understand that we think this sidestepping of the public reviews should be cut back. And I understand Mr. Garodik has explained this in part and may repeat that again, but we will review that more carefully. Finally, regarding the increased ease provided for the transferring of development rights by individually landmarked buildings, we agree that the current boundaries have been largely prohibitive to such transfers, but the newly extended boundaries may be too generous. Regarding universal affordability preferences, this would create a blanket 20% increase in FAR and allowed height in exchange for affordable housing. While the goal is laudable.
Lo, you're out of time, but let me just ask you to finish your sentence because we want to hear it.
Thank you. While the goal is laudable, we fear that the new building or additions may displace existing affordable units, and the newly built expansions will often mainly provide luxury housing. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks for that. Appreciate your being with us. Okay, let's move on to Yatin Chu.
I think you're going to hear from Nicole Young.
Oh, okay. Am I allowed to trade so willy-nilly? Okay, let's start with Nicole Young. Hi, Nicole. How are you? I'm sorry. You're good. You're good. You're on my list too here, so let's do that. My apologies if I went out of order. You're good. Let's hear from you. Welcome.
Great, thanks. So I'm a lifelong New Yorker who has benefited from affordable housing. My name is Nicole Young, and I am opposed to the city of Yes. I was raised in Mitchell-Lama, which makes home ownership possible and supports community engagement. We should be identifying more opportunities to support affordable home ownership and stop focusing on the belief that home production equals affordable housing. Earlier in the day, I sat in that testimony room, but like many others, I did leave. Once again, appreciate all of the people testifying as well as those that are still in the room. Earlier in the day, I heard an architecture association state that people who design the homes for the people in our city cannot afford to live in our city. Well, as a city employee, a teacher, I can barely afford to live in this city. And I'm responsible for educating all of our residents. The reason why I bring this up is because I actually benefited from a program offered by the city to become a teacher later in life called the New York City Teaching Collaborative. I think we should be doing more during this time of recruitment when we need more police officers, more firemen, more teachers, to be offering opportunities and gateways and pathways to programs like Mitchell-Lama instead of the disguise with the city of yes, that we're going to create more luxury buildings and then suddenly 20% are going to go to affordable. Earlier, somebody also mentioned that just putting a gourmet grocery shop would suddenly solve hunger, which it will not. As a mother, I also fear that my children won't be able to afford them in my beloved city, but let me tell you why. Apparently, 80 million was earmarked to preserve Mitchell-Lamas, yet that might not be true because Camden Plaza and Brooklyn use loopholes to become privatized. This prevents people from gaining an entry point to affordable home ownership. Another program, Rad Pact, affects many buildings, one in particular in Rockaway that was transformed, yet those residents saw a 61% increase in rent and a 19% eviction rate. This is not providing affordable housing. Furthermore, the New York Times reports on props where builders should be creating public open space in exchange for generous tax abatements. However, this is not happening because the builders are simply taking on the minimal fees of noncompliance and putting it in part of their cost analysis. Speaking of compliance, as Samuel Turvey mentioned about benchmarks, it is clear that the city is unable to keep up with our own building inspections. And I believe another woman just mentioned it from Bay Ridge. And so the AUDs really are the new SROs. And despite what that woman just mentioned in the arts, I personally don't believe that SROs or the former tenements is what's going to provide affordable housing. The housing crisis is definitely due to the high rent burdens. Therefore, I think that we should be taking a greater look at how to change legislation to prevent landlords from doing what they were doing, as Mr. Brown was talking about, and not on zoning. Thank you so much for.
Thank you, Ms. Young. I'm going to go next to Yatin Chu. I will also note, just on the subject of universal affordability preference, just a quick reminder for those who have been listening through the day. This is additional density opportunity for the creation of affordable housing only. And it's an important distinction that I feel like maybe has been missed a few times today. The additional density is only available for affordable housing. So this is not a market rate opportunity. This is an affordability opportunity only. Okay, let's go on to Yatin Chu.
Good evening. My name is Yatin Chu, and I'm president of Asian Wave Alliance. Our organization represents the interests of thousands of residents, property owners, and voters throughout New York City. We speak for our friends and neighbors who are outraged at the mayor's blanket proposals that will destroy our communities. Asian New Yorkers have the highest rate of home ownership, and we've settled in the outer boroughs of Queens, Brooklyn, and Staten Island. Many of us are immigrants who poured our life savings into our home to put down roots in our communities, a nest egg for retirement, and maybe pass it down to our children, the American dream and building generational wealth. Most of us have a small home with a front and backyard, and good schools for our children as a path for social mobility. Not only will the city of Yes throw uncertainty in property values, but most pressing is how the ill-conceived plan would degrade our quality of life in the 1- and 2-family zone neighborhoods. It is absurd that the city of Yes will eliminate parking requirements for new residential housing. We are already stressed with the lack of parking in Bayside, Flushing, Bensonhurst, and Gravesend, with more multi-generational families living in 1-family and 2-family homes. These areas lack efficient public transportation and rely on cars to get around. In Queens, we cannot support more development around LIR stations. The parking is near impossible to find now. Many people drive and park near the stations and need to drive to pick up kids from schools and do our food shopping. We oppose the dangerous legalization of ADUs, basement apartments, garage conversions, and backyard houses. Illegal ADUs are already a huge problem for many residential areas, and permissive zoning in the city of Yes will make the quality of life much worse. The congestion and infrastructure demands in these less dense suburban areas cannot be supported without major investments in sewer lines, electrical capacity, roadwork, and essential services like schools, police, fire departments, and hospitals. With the class size law, many schools in Queens and Brooklyn cannot even accommodate the school zone for the local schools now. How can we have more families move into these neighborhoods without provisions for these basic essential services? We are a city made up of hundreds of unique neighborhoods. Each neighborhood and community should be respected for our unique composition and concerns, and not gentrified in favor of developers' interests. Asian Wave Alliance opposes the city of Yes. We urge the City Council to reject the entirety of this harmful package of proposals from Mayor Adams. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Let me see if William Stemler is on the Zoom.
He is not in the Zoom.
How about Emmanuel Kokinakis?
Yes, promoting now.
Hi, good afternoon. Good evening, I'm sorry. As
We've lost track too. It's okay.
I
Welcome.
know it's been a long day, and I'd like to commend the commissioners for your service and thank city planning for undertaking this endeavor. I think this is an absolutely necessary endeavor. My name is Emmanuel Kokonakis. I'm with Mega Contracting and Development. We are an affordable housing builder and developer, doing this for 3 decades in New York City. A couple points that I want to raise, given the hour. I don't want to repeat what's already been said, but under the current provisions here, we've undergone ULURPs and rezonings in pretty much every borough of the city for 100% affordable projects that, had this been adopted, would not have been necessary. So that's time, city resources, and money that could have gone to developing additional affordable housing for these 100% affordable projects had this been adopted sooner. I think we're facing a very unique time where, unfortunately, development for workforce, market rate housing, and middle income and low income affordable housing is at a precipice where the current tax breaks, the 485X as currently adopted, is in itself not enough to move the needle for financial feasibility of new developments, particularly in the boroughs. This City of Yes proposal will allow for mixed income development, which will generate low income affordable housing without the need of city subsidy. It is absolutely going to be taken advantage of, but without it, the 45X alone would not support financial feasibility for development in the outer boroughs. It will absolutely benefit 100% affordable units that are going to provide truly affordable, low-income, affordable housing. So we absolutely are for this proposal and think that also the parking benefits, which render a lot of projects infeasible, will now become feasible. So we thank you for taking on this endeavor, and we'll conclude my testimony.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Okay. Let me go next to Alex McCoy, to be followed by Alex Armlovich.
Great. Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. My name's Alexander McCoy. I am a 80% service disabled Marine Corps veteran. I'm also a member of Open New York, and I've lived in my home in Upper Manhattan and have been advocating for fellow post 9/11 veterans in New York City for more than a decade, ever since I separated from the service. I'd like to express my enthusiastic support for City of Yes in its entirety, and specifically explain why it's necessary for its provisions for the welfare of New York City's veterans, and how harmed we are by the status quo of our system of restrictive zoning and the necessity for excruciating battles over nearly every construction project to build new homes. A speaker this morning, I've been listening ever since 10. So God bless you all. But a speaker this morning described how the original GI Bill enabled millions of veterans to enter the middle class and achieve home ownership, something a lot of people have been praising tonight. I'd like to talk about what the experience of our housing shortage is like in practice for the current generation of veterans like me, despite our benefits being far more generous on paper than any generation that came before us. So as an example, a 100% disabled veteran with a spouse who is their full-time caregiver receiving funding from the VA, along with 2 children, has a household income of about $88,000. That's $50K for the veterans for their disability and $37,000-38,000 for their spouse. That means that family, that veteran, can only afford a monthly rent or mortgage expense of $2,950 a month in order to not be considered rent burden. And that's too low to afford to live in many areas of our city, and also means that home ownership is unrealistic and unthinkable at current housing prices. At these interest rates, our example veteran and their family could only afford a 30-year mortgage to buy a condo or other home if it costs less than around $300,000. Good luck with that. Additionally, veterans attending our world-class colleges using their GI Bill are able to afford about $1,700 a month in rent. The exclusionary restrictive zoning of much of New York City forces veterans to live in substandard conditions and have lengthy commutes. And therefore, it is no surprise that New York City has a significantly lower percentage of veterans residing per capita, despite our many advantages. And despite this, we frequently see exclusionary anti-home members of our communities cynically exploit veterans like me, as well as other sympathetic protagonists, as props against the building of new homes. And I fully support the measures of the City of Yes program, and I think you should implement them in full. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks very much, Mr. McCoy. Appreciate that. Okay. Alex Armlovich, welcome.
Great.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you for accommodating my transition from virtual to in-person on my way in from DC. So, yeah, I'm Alex Armlovich.
You could have traveled from California.
I know, my goodness.
Or
yes,
further.
Exactly.
Anyway, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Alex Armlovich, Housing Policy Manager at the Niskanen Center, a think tank that advocates for strong markets, strong social insurance, and a liberalism that builds. We work on housing supply policy, both at the federal level and at the states, and for localities the size of states. But I'm also a co-op owner in the Jackson Heights Historic District. I'm here to endorse every component of the City of Yes. You already know why. It's for all of the affordability, climate, and economic growth reasons ably outlined by Chair Grodnick, city planning staff, and all of my fellow commenters all day. But I'm also here to give a modest warning on the transit-oriented component. It's allowing just 3 to 5 story buildings near mass transit, and I'm concerned that it may not be enough. 3 stories may be transit-oriented development in the Dallas suburbs, but this is New York City. Our historic pre-war vernacular is the 6-story walk-up building. 3 stories near transit and jobs is arguably ahistoric and acontextual in this city. I think it's too small. When I wrote this, I was joining you from my office in Washington, D.C., where the infamous Height Act limits all buildings to just 10 stories. Arlington and Silver Springs and the D.C. burbs have bigger skyscrapers than D.C. But what we're looking at is less than half the D.C. height limit in New York City near transit. With respect, that's a little embarrassing. The city's TOD proposal is showing up to a Knicks home game wearing a Washington Wizards uniform. But now, City of Yes is essential, but it is a sensitive community development bill, not a radical YIMBY bill. It will meet 20% of Mayor Adams' housing goal, as we've heard today, but the visible changes to neighborhoods will be so small that it would take a trained expert to identify them 20 years from now, based on the size of buildings. So like basically ADUs in 3-story buildings, it would end Buffalo's housing shortage, but this is New York City. To get to 500,000 units and to get MTA ridership back to 2019 levels, we need bigger TOD. We're going to need to do better than half or less of DC's already pretty small height limits near transit. We are a global megacity, and we need to stop pretending otherwise when it comes to our growth controls. So today, thank you again for your efforts to save New York City and to restore the Empire State spirit that once used to guide this city's vision of an abundant and inclusive future. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Okay, let's go to Barry Weinberg. welcome.
Jewish grandmother in me wants to ask if you've eaten. The Irish mother in me tells you it's your own fault for trying to push through 1,386 pages of zoning text. So I'll split the difference and say good evening. My name is Barry Weinberg. I am the first vice chair of Manhattan Community Board 9. I am here to deliver certain feedback from our board. We voted in favor of the City of Yes for zoning for housing and opportunity with certain conditions. Like the previous speaker, we believe that certain provisions do not go far enough, particularly 23-211. We believe that the R1 through R3 zoning district should, instead of having a 0.75 FAR, be bumped up to 1.0 FAR, and the R2X and R4 district should be bumped from 1.0 to 1.25 FAR. We also believe that the ADU maximum square footage should be bumped from 800 square feet to 1,200 square feet to allow for the potential for two-bedroom ADUs. But beyond that, we also want to convey our sincerest appreciation and gratitude for DCP staff, particularly Borough Planner Audrey Walks, Upper Manhattan Team Lead Jose Prusios, and Housing Division Chief John Mangan, for all of their work in answering our many questions and for their many months of extensive outreach. It is not lost on us that many of our proposals from our March 2023 resolution made it into this package. So for those who are worried about not enough public engagement, it's been going on for years. But our biggest pieces of feedback are around UAP, particularly 27-111. We are extremely concerned that UAP, as written, does not include in the zoning text a requirement that affordable housing units created with the bonus square footage be made available to the general public. Manhattan Community Board 9 is home to many large real estate owning institutions, including Columbia University, Barnard College, Union Theological Seminary, Jewish Theological Seminary. By allowing affordable housing units to be either Class A or Class B dwelling units, and by allowing them to be either rooming units or housing units, and by allowing them to be either residential or community facility space, you open the door for enterprising and well-heeled institutions to strike an agreement with HPD to provide the affordable housing units created with UAP bonus square footage to their own affiliates, without having to make them available to the public through mechanisms like HPD's Housing Connect. We have been assured that HPD would never do this, that that there are other provisions that would prevent this, to which we replied, great, then it shouldn't matter if you also include a line about it in the zoning text. I am an engineer by training. A little redundancy is not a bad thing. It is a safeguard. And so we urge you to include a provision in 27-111 and any other necessary parts to require any affordable housing units from UAP to be made available to the public and not just to affiliates of the institutional owner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Okay, I'm sorry. Commissioner Benjamin had a question for you.
Are you in favor of neighborhood preferences, just not the institution?
We are strongly in favor of neighborhood preferences. We are disappointed about the recent settlement, but
20% settlement?
Yes, but we are in favor of neighborhood preferences, but not restrictions on those units, only making them available to affiliates of the institution. So, for example, if you had a apartment building that was built by an institution, say for faculty housing, which is their right to have licensee housing, and they wanted to take advantage of the 20% FAR bonus provided by UAP, it would be theoretically possible, we believe, for the institution to sign an agreement with Columbia that they would make their affordable housing units under UAP, which can be community facility space, which can be, Class B under the MDL, available to graduate students, say, who make $20,000 to $30,000 a year and could conceivably have qualified under the income requirements, and not make them available to the public. And a big part of why we support the bulk of housing opportunity is because it holds the promise of finally incentivizing institutions to build affordable housing that could be made available to the public. But we want to make sure that that does not slip through. And HPD, with all due respect, is a department that has sold out the people of New York for things as small as Yankees tickets and Nets tickets, if the DOI is to be believed.
I don't know about that, but I would also just ask if the affordable housing provided under UAB is being provided by a house of worship, and they would like to encourage the housing for their adherents. Is that
then they
in the category you were talking about?
Then they should run workshops for their adherents to help them complete fully qualifying and completed Housing Connect applications and allow them to go through the lottery like the general public, perhaps with a bit better preparation. But you know, if they want to have licensee housing, they can do that without taking advantage of UAP. But as a counter, institutions in our neighborhood have purchased rent-regulated buildings for years. In the 50s and 60s, they would summarily evict all the tenants and then move in their people. After the laws changed in the 70s, tenants were allowed to stay for the duration of their lease, at which point the unit is removed from regulation and becomes licensee housing. That is a separate problem for us, but this would finally allow us, but there are mixed affiliate, non-affiliate buildings where those tenancies are still ongoing. And so that is an excellent example of the type of housing that we would like to see deliberately created and made affordable and available to the general public in perpetuity.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Let's go to, forgive me. Let's go to Raul Rivera. Hello, Mr. Rivera.
Good evening. My name is Raul Rivera. I'm a New York native. I'm 54 years old, currently homeless. I oppose the city of Yes. There's several things I can say, but one of the things I want to bring to your attention is that City Council member Rafael Salamanca, he's a chair to the Committee on Land Use, and his wife received a cushy job with the help of the mayor. I know you might not want to hear that, but you have to hear it because his chair is important and it benefits the mayor. And we call that out everywhere we go in the city council. We'll do it here. We don't believe in the city of Yes. The council members don't support New Yorkers. We do agree with the Common Sense Caucus, but in the city council, we have a bunch of Puerto Ricans, we have Dominicans, we have blacks, and they always want to blame white supremacy and Donald Trump. But it's our own people sticking it to us. I'm 54 years old, and they keep blaming the white man, but it's our own people. And you know this is a fact. If you look at the council, you look at the list of those people there, and 30 of them are like women. 30 of them are women. I'm opposed to the city of Yes. I grew up in the Bronx. There's plenty of buildings in the Bronx that are renovated. I used to play in those buildings. I used to play in those buildings as a kid. That was my playground. And I can't afford to live in those buildings now. And the city of Yes is not going to help people like me. It's not. And when you have the mayor in a $5,000 suit going to Hudson Yards to cut a ribbon for 50 Hudson Yards with Stephen Ross, right? That tells you he's not with the New Yorker. He's not with me. And I know the mayor. He knows who I am. I'm a strong advocate for the taxi drivers. I've slept in my vehicle. I know other drivers sleeping in their vehicles. And we advocate hard for the drivers because we are struggling here in the city. The mayor can't even stand by his name. We got a petition to reform the Taxi Limousine Commission, and he signed that petition. His name is on it. And many of the council members and congressmen and assemblymen, assemblywomen, and we got to sue Taxi Limousine Commission. That's what we're doing now because they don't want to stand by their name. So if Mr. Adams can't stand by his name to reform the Taxi Limousine Commission, I don't think you have to listen to him when he's talking about the city of Yes. I think he's a sham mayor. and we call them out. And we have nothing personal against them, and we also endorsed them. But he lost our support when he refused to live the mandates. Those mandates, that's when he lost us.
Thank you, Mr. Rivera. Let's move on to Wilson Parry on Zoom.
Wilson Perry is not in the Zoom.
Nabil Khatri.
Nabil is not in the Zoom.
Bob Kelly.
We have two Bob Kellys. We will promote both of them.
Great.
Bob, you should have the ability to turn on your microphone. Bob, if you can hear me, you should have the ability to turn on your microphone. It's possible that Mr. Kelly has experienced technical difficulties.
Okay, let's look for Corey Birak on Zoom.
Corey Birak is in Zoom.
Video. Okay, I am here. Good evening.
Hello, Mr. Birak. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, you know me as Corey, so you can address me that way. I'm Corey
All right,
Birak,
Corey.
and I chair the Community Board 13 Land Use Subcommittee on City of Yes and Creedmoor. And Community Board 13 held public meetings and discussions concerning the proposed City of Yes for housing opportunity, and including before its Land Use Committee late last month. And the board adopted unanimously a resolution 41-0 on June 24th that recommends rejection of the provisions of City of Yes for housing opportunity. Why? Each of the provisions of City of Yes for housing opportunity would remove traditional New York City Charter mandated community board, borough president, and city council review of uses not permitted under existing zoning and land use provisions. And I've heard what the chair had said earlier while I was waiting to Zoom, so I can discuss that a little bit further if need be. Charter mandated community review protects neighborhoods from adverse and unplanned and unanticipated impacts before new development can occur. The best ways to address possible future needs require the city to provide tools and resources to each of its community boards to identify parcels in any given community that might be appropriate and make sense for beneficial local development, and thereby foster collaborations with government, community, and the private and nonprofit sectors to realize such beneficial results. The as of right features, because you're changing the rules to allow something that's not allowed now, of each of the provisions of City of Yes, would weaken, if not render totally useless, those charter mandated community review provisions. Community Board 13 finds that any land use zoning or planning provisions, including those found in City of Yes for housing opportunity, that weaken rather than strengthen community review provisions found in the charter, merit strong disapproval. And I just want to point out, twice a year I attend out on Long Island, to Vision Long Island. They have a Smart Growth Summit in December and a Smart Growth Awards program in June. And there's a lot of community-based collaborations throughout Long Island that include affordable housing, senior housing, and the like. And there's no reason we can't have those kind of things happening in the city of New York if people are working together and planning together. But right now, the community boards don't have those resources. And there's no question, when I've discussed with my own community members possible sites, they have them in mind, but there's no opportunity, there's no methodology right now to talk about how to do those things. And the provisions in City of Yes, I look at as tools that we can implement through a community review process as needed on a case by case, but to do it
Time.
citywide, I think is not helpful and not gonna render the results we need.
Okay, got it. Thank you, Corey. Thank you for your time and for being with us. Good to see you.
Same here.
Okay, all right. Let me move on to Kathy Ebeck.
Kathy Ebeck is not in the Zoom.
Christina Dayanandan.
Christina is not in the Zoom.
Bill Konigsberg.
Is in the Zoom and we're promoting.
Mr. Konigsberg, welcome. Mr. Konigsberg there? Mr. Konigsberg?
He is. One moment.
Bill, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Mr. Konigsberg? Okay, I'd like to move on to the next.
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, great. Terrific. Mr. Konigsberg, the floor is yours.
Yes, but something happened to my screen, so I need to, okay. Did you hear any of my discussion?
We did not. So why don't you
Okay.
start again and we'll look forward to hearing it. Thanks.
Restart my clock then, okay. My name is,
You're good.
okay, my name is Phil Konigsberg. I live in Bay Terrace in Northeast Queens. I am the second vice president of the Bay Terrace Community Alliance and the health chair of Queens Community Board 7, which last month unanimously voted no on the City of Yes for housing opportunity. The following comments are my own as a resident of Northeast Queens for decades. I want to make it crystal clear to not only the members of the City Planning Commission, but to the media outlets attending, if they're still there now. I am 100% opposed to the City of Yes housing opportunity, which I am convinced, if approved, will lead to a city of chaos in all boroughs except for Manhattan. Therefore, I urge you to vote no. If approved, each and every part of the proposed zoning text will destroy our communities across the city, particularly lower density, but high density areas such as Bay Terrace, where our civic association represents over 5,000 residents, primarily living in co-op and condos. Therefore, I urge you to vote no. I want the press, our local radio and television stations, and our electronic and print media to understand what the City Planning Commission already knows. They know it's not going to create affordable housing of any kind. Rather, as others have mentioned earlier this morning, afternoon, and evening, will replace owner-occupied housing with market rate rental units and increase density without infrastructure that ultimately end enforcement of illegal apartments throughout the city. I hope the press will expose how this attempt by the city administration to shove this through will become a disaster. So I urge the press to read and question every part of this proposal, and you will see why the headline should read, "No, no, no" on the City of Yes. To our fine journalists, please, we're counting on you to let the people know what is going on and hopefully help what my council member, Vicky Palladino, suggested. Do a pilot program in a neighborhood that favors this proposal. Real quick, Chairman Gradnick, Paul Benedetto, the Queens Community Board 11 chair who spoke earlier this evening, wanted to mention that he read your book about how you saved your part of the city from overdevelopment. So maybe you could understand how we feel in Northeast Queens.
Time.
Floyd's going to say that, but he was muted. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. First of all, appreciate that. Love that anybody read my book. That's a wonderful thing. It was not a case or a question about overdevelopment, but it was a case of, how a community would think about the turbulence of the sale of 30,000 units at a single time in the city's history. But I appreciate that very much, and thank you. Okay, let's move on to Julianne Hirsch.
Julianne is not in the Zoom.
Arlo Chase.
Arlo is not in the Zoom.
Sanford Miller.
Sanford is in the Zoom, and we're promoting.
Great, Mr. Miller, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me today. I am a resident of Hell's Kitchen, and I'm a renter, and I'm quite concerned about the cost of renting in the city. My rent has gone up every year, quite a bit, and I worry that I will be priced out of the neighborhood or out of the city even. So with that in mind, I strongly support the city of Yes. I think taking decisive action to increase housing supply across the city of both market rate and affordable housing is such an important thing. And I think City of Yes will be impactful in that direction. I want to talk about a few specific programs as well that I thought were particularly notable. I want to talk about the dropping of parking requirements is something I strongly support, both from a transit perspective and from a housing perspective. As I think other people have mentioned, it costs $67,000, I believe, was the estimate to build a parking spot in Manhattan. That is astronomical, and surely does both prevent housing from being built and increase the cost of the housing that is built. And parking mandates require people to pay for housing or pay for parking that they're not even using, which just seems totally unfair to me as someone who wants to, use the city's many public transportation options is still forced to live somewhere with parking that they are paying for. Another policy that I think is I want to call out is UAP, which I believe is I want to say I think it is a very nuanced way to get some more affordable housing in large parts of the city, all the high density districts. I am on the Manhattan Community Board 4. I do not speak for the board. Not speak for the board right now, but I was very impressed with the presentation on UAP. Manhattan Board 4 has a lot of special districts, and the application of UAP to the special districts preserved the concept of the special districts and reflected them while still allowing for that additional 20% density on what would have otherwise been allowed to get us that marginal affordable housing, which will be so impactful for whoever lives there. So I thought that was both an idea, but also the execution and actually how it was mapped to the city. I was very impressed, and I thought it was very well done. Looks like I have 4 seconds left, so those will be the 2 topics I talked about. Thank you for listening to me.
Time.
Great, that's great. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go to Samuel Deutsch.
Samuel is not in the Zoom.
Sandy Brown.
Sandy Brown is not in the Zoom.
Jeremy Kaplan.
Jeremy is not in the Zoom.
Cheryl Clevin.
Cheryl Clevin is in the Zoom.
Great.
Voting now.
Ms. Clevin. Welcome. The floor is yours, followed by Leonard Paletta Sally Sinisgali, perhaps, if they're there. Ms. Clevin available? Ms. Clevin, are you there?
It does not appear that she is still with us.
Okay, let's go to Leonard Paletta. Is he in the Zoom?
Yes, voting now.
Okay, Mr. Paletta. Mr. Paletta, when you are promoted, you may go ahead and proceed.
Leonard, you should be able to unmute.
Yes, can you see me?
We can. We can hear you, and now we can see you. Great.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you for sticking it out. Chairman Garodnick and commission members, my name is Leonard Paletta. I am one of 2,800 cooperators at Penn South in Chelsea, an affordable co-op built with city and union funds in the 60s. The union was the International Ladies Garment Workers Union. I've lived in Brooklyn and Manhattan since 1977. I am here to say that the City of Yes for housing opportunity will not provide the low-income affordable housing that New York desperately needs for several reasons. First, its comprehensive nature and one-size-fits-all approach is wrong-headed. We do not need a comprehensive citywide lifting of so many zoning restrictions. This deregulation of zoning restrictions, together with the absence of mandatory affordability requirements, will not provide us with the affordable housing we desperately need. Reliance on developers to provide affordability voluntarily when so many are fixated on the maximization of profit will just not provide truly affordable housing, as several other speakers have detailed. The lack of mandatory affordability requirements in the City of Yes is a fatal capitulation to developers. The City of Yes initiative does not mandate affordable housing provisions, which means little or no truly affordable housing will be built. Additionally, there are no provisions for the city to address the building of amenities and infrastructure, which so many of the earlier speakers have addressed. In parts of the city, we are woefully lacking the amenities and infrastructure that would accommodate the additional, supposedly additional people. This will exacerbate economic and racial segregation patterns and limit housing options for working class New Yorker. The city can and must build more public housing and infrastructure. City planning can focus City Hall's attention on how to properly spend our tax dollars. The city should be renovating existing public housing stock, as well as building more low-income public housing using creative financing arrangements used in other jurisdictions to build additional public housing. There are now 7,000 vacant apartments in NYCHA and thousands more warehoused throughout the city. Rather than spending billions on simply managing homelessness with private companies, the city could be focused on mandating the rehabilitation of those vacant and warehoused apartments. Stronger rent control laws and vigorous enforcement of those laws will do more to make housing affordable than all the changes contemplated by the zoning changes in the City of Yes.
Time.
All right, Mr. Paletta, thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate your sticking with us. Thank you. All right, let's move on to Sally Sinisgali.
Promoting.
Hello. Hi,
Hello.
my name is Sally, and it's Sally Ann Sinisgali. I'm a private resident and homeowner in Howard Beach, Community Board 10. Although we are one city, we are not all created equal. Here in Howard Beach, we are in a flood area. We have severe flooding issues that need to be addressed before any proposal goes through. More buildings and ADUs will take away green space, which currently helps us with reabsorption of water during high tides. It'll cause more flood claims, causing our already extremely high home, auto, and flood insurance prices to go higher, affecting our quality of life. Put up our floodgates we were promised and approved for 40 years ago. In Howard Beach, I live in a suburban area. If I wanted to buy a house in an urban area, I would have. Why can't the proposal be broken up by community board votes? Why can't we, the people, have a voice in our own areas that we're invested in? Please vote no to the City of Yes, or take Community Board 10 out of the equation. Thank you for your time, gentlemen and ladies.
Thank you. Okay, Michelle Delauz she was here, and now she may be with us on Zoom.
She is on Zoom.
Terrific. All right, Michelle, whenever you're ready, welcome. Michelle, you there?
She might have stepped away, but we can.
Okay, we'll come back to her.
Yeah.
How about Phil Levin?
I do not
Is
see
Phil
Phil
Levin
Levin in the Zoom.
Okay. How about Diana Finch?
Diana Finch is in the Zoom.
Okay. Let's call her up. Ms. Finch?
Thank you. My name's Diana Finch. I live in the Bronx Park East Pelham Parkway neighborhood in one of the community board districts that has added the least new housing recently. On the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, I'm in favor. I'm dismayed by the way that most of the opposition I've heard seems to be based on exaggeration and fear mongering, while too many on all sides seem to be ignoring or downplaying the role of the environmental impact statement in the process. City of Yes is a text amendment, not a developer's specific project seeking ULURP approval. Thus, not every possible new building that would be allowed by City of Yes will be built, not immediately, and in many cases, not ever. Current property owners would retain control of whether to sell or whether to build themselves. Yet the opposition portrays the result as if all the allowed new building would spring up as soon as City of Yes is passed. If city planning has data or projections on how quickly the new amendments, if passed, would be utilized, it would be so helpful to share that information widely with the public. I've been following the presentations pretty closely and have not seen it yet. On the other hand, perhaps a good compromise solution would be to include caps on the amount and pace of some of the new building that would be allowed by City of Yes. The neighborhood I live in is an R6 zoning, and in the past 2 years, within a 12 square block area, 10 new 6- and 7-story apartment buildings have gone up, each one in place of either a 1- or 2-family house or an empty lot, all within the current zoning regulations, but yet with a significant impact on the local community. Based on this experience, I think that concerns about maximum capacity building are valid, even if they're being grossly exaggerated by the opposition. And I urge city planning to consider including some type of cap on the amount or pace or both of the allowed new building. I'd also like to thank Commissioner Goodrich for her excellent questions about how the campus provisions would impact NYCHAs. While my neighborhood does have some institutional campuses with underused green space, our NYCHAs, Pelham Parkway houses and Parkside, have much needed green space essential to their quality of life that I'm sure residents don't want to give up, especially not to private development. And as long as the Faircloth Amendment banning new public housing construction remains unrepealed. Thank you very much for listening through this very long day.
Great, thank you. And I will note that we have just hit 13 hours for this commission, so congrats to all of you. I don't know if that's any record setting because some of you are veterans more than me, but congrats to all. Okay, let's proceed. Let's move on to, we're going to go back to James Freely, then Bob Kelly.
James is being promoted, and we have Bob next.
Great.
James, you should be able to unmute.
Did I do so?
Yeah, you did it.
All right. I wanted to make a joke about being at the dentist, but I'm just going to go into it.
That's
Can
okay.
you
We
hear me
won't
now?
we won't dock you anytime. Just tell us if you just want to make sure you didn't have any cavities. Everything's okay.
Everything's good. Teeth are
Okay.
nice and white. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'd like to question the New York City citywide vacancy statistic of 1.41, which has been used to create urgency and fear to push the City of Yes housing proposal. Often situations presented as urgent and fearful may be scams. We should question whether the increased supply will really alleviate the quote-unquote housing crisis. The 2023 New York City Housing Vacancy Survey states that there are nearly 230 vacant housing units available right now. Adding those units would change the vacancy rate in order of magnitude from 1.41 to 11. Just half of that 230 would change it to 6.3. Page 31 notes that nearly 25,000 units, that nearly 25,000 units are vacant, are unavailable simply due to the need for a refrigerator or stove. Manhattan Borough President Levine was excited about unlocking 6,000 units in office spaces. We should instead unlock these 25,000 units by supplying necessary appliances. Office spaces will need the appliances anyway. Page 29 also notes that nearly 60,000 vacant units were held for occasional or short-term use. Local Law 18 of 2022 effectively prohibits short-term rental. In 2029 pre-pandemic, there were 50,000 short-term rentals. And after Local Law 18, the number dropped to about 7,000 Airbnb listings. The new 43,000 newly found Airbnb units did not noticeably affect the affordability citywide. According to the 2023 survey, page 4, there was an overall increase of 61,000 units. Housing prices did not go down. Page 6, net increase of 7%, 153,000 rental units. Housing prices did not go down. The narrative about the housing crisis and supply and demand is flawed. Housing prices, including rental prices, increased in the 90s and 00s due to unscrupulous lending practices. Housing prices went up again when interest rates were near 3% through the 2010s. The City of Yes's goal of 500K units, 50% of which could be unlocked within months or a year due to the 230 above, does not guarantee 500,000 affordable units. Optimistically, if 20% of the 500K are affordable, that's only 100K units. If the influx of 43K Airbnb units and the additional 153,000 rental units from the survey didn't affect affordability, why believe that more of housing supply will? This narrative is repeatedly proven incorrectly. What does affect affordability? National inflation, interest rates, lending practices, real estate taxes, and
Thank you very much, Mr. Freely. We appreciate it. Let's move on to Bob Kelly, then Samuel Deutsch and Lucy Cotine. Mr. Kelly there?
I believe he may be. One moment. Mr. Kelly, you have the ability to turn on your microphone. Mr. Kelly, if you can hear me, you can turn on your mic.
Okay. If Mr. Kelly's not ready, let's please see if we can get Mr. Deutsch.
Mr. Deutsch is being promoted.
Hello. I hope you all can see and hear me all right. Thank you all for taking.
We can hear you. There we go. Now we can see you.
Okay, perfect.
Welcome.
I want to thank you all for taking the time. It's an absurd hour. It just goes to show how important this issue is. I think my comment is just going to be about the fact that as gray as New York City is not the first city to have dealt with housing policy and examining how adjusting the housing policy of the city can make the city better for its residents and for the planet. So I want to focus on two comparison cities that I think we should look to for inspiration. The first is Vancouver. There, climate change is a really important issue as it is here. And they, as a result, pursued extensive transit-oriented development policies because getting housing built near where transit exists so people don't need to drive as much or don't even need to own cars is one of the most effective policies to reduce carbon emissions on the whole at a city level. And so there, even though Vancouver is a much smaller city than New York, they approved by right 20-story apartment buildings right by their SkyTrain stations, which is their rail mass transit. So I think the fact that we're just looking at, 3 to 5 stories here in New York, that should really be a no-brainer. And if anything, I would think for the long term, there should be more pressure to look even bigger than that and help more people live sustainable, low carbon, car-free lifestyles by building more housing near transit. So that's the first parallel. The second parallel, I think, is Austin, Texas. They've been building about 10 times as much housing per capita as New York has, and rents are plummeting. I have friends there who are getting rent decreases, which is kind of unheard of here in New York, precisely because they've loosened their zoning restrictions, they've allowed more housing to be built, and as a result, supply has been able to really, tons of housing has been built to meet the demand, and as a result, people who are living there and new people who are moving there and helping the economy, everybody is finding more places to live and rents are going down and it's a win-win. So I'm strongly in support of the city of Yes. I think if anything long-term, there should be opportunities to go even further than the city of Yes, because this is really pretty basic no-brainer stuff. But I nonetheless really appreciate the work you all are doing and am excited to hopefully see this pass the council and to see more climate-friendly housing built in New York. So thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. With much appreciation, Mr. Deutsch, thank you for being with us. Okay, let's move on to Lucy Coteen.
Lucy is rejoining.
Hello, thank you for your stamina sticking to this. My name is Lucy Coteen. I live in Brooklyn, and I wanted to bring up something that I haven't heard much about tonight, which is environmental concerns. I read that the production of cement accounts for 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions. The construction section produces almost a quarter of global the construction sector produces almost a quarter of global greenhouse gas emissions. Reused materials already have embodied carbon. All over the city, there are empty structures and empty housing units. There are thousands, some say as much as 80,000 rent-controlled and rent-stabilized units being warehoused. There are new apartment buildings, mostly high-end, that sit half empty. As we all know, office buildings have much empty space. Do you remember MIH? I think every community board voted against it. Did that bring us more affordable housing? Not to mention low-income housing. No, not at all. And why should we trust this to do anything different? It did bring, however, significant tax breaks to developers. Yes, it did. The question the city should be looking at is, do we have a housing shortage or do we have a distribution problem? Fill the empty units and buildings that are already standing. Don't push more construction until every existing unit is filled, even if it means subsidizing lower income families in higher end units instead of paying exploitive charges in homeless shelters. Help landlords bring their empty units up to code with subsidized loans to get the construction done. And as was said before, there's something like 5,000 empty NYCHA units in the city. Take care of these things first. Take care of the affordable housing that already exists rather than build new. There's so much construction going on all over the city. Have you been to the Bronx? There's enormous buildings going there. Brooklyn, where I live, enormous high rises all over. Who's going to live in these buildings? Most of them are high end. I don't know there's that many rich people around. I hardly recognize Brooklyn for all the new high rises where we used to have 2 to 6 story buildings. Now we have less sky and more shadows. The majority of what is called affordable is 80 to 130% AMI. That's not going to get us out of the need for affordable housing. I should say low income housing. The word affordable is a phony word. Hang on. So we need to go forward in fixing what we already have. We need to not have the cart before the horse. Let's take care of what we have before building any. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Coteen. Appreciate it. Let me just make one quick comment about NYCHA, because we've heard in several points today about the vacancies at NYCHA. NYCHA vacancies are actually at historic lows, and those vacancies represent the pool of housing that is either getting rehabbed or being held as swing space for imminent building-wide rehabs. So for those who are pointing to NYCHA vacancies as the rationale for not producing more housing, I just wanted to note that NYCHA vacancies actually are at historic lows, and that is what accounts for any of the vacancies at issue. So, okay, let's proceed. Madam Secretary, should we go back to Michelle De La Uz? Can we do that, or?
Yeah, let's try.
Okay.
We are promoting and also allowing to talk. It appears Michelle declined promotion.
All right. Okay, I have a few folks on my list here, some of whom I believe we have called already. Phil Levin, I don't know if we have called yet, and I don't know if he's in the Zoom. But I have Diana Finch on my list, and she is already gone. And then I have Shams DeBaron.
I do not
This is
see.
not in the Zoom.
No Shams. And what about, okay, and none of the other folks that I just mentioned. Okay, Matthew Kennedy, not here in the room, and has not appeared on Zoom, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Janet McCreesh.
Not in the Zoom.
Sherida Paulson.
Not in the Zoom.
Elvia Drayton.
Not in the Zoom.
Alicia Spears,
Not in the Zoom.
Christine Parker,
Not in the Zoom.
Adam Weinstein,
Not in the Zoom.
we heard from Eustacia Smith already, didn't we? Right. Okay, Tyler DeRubio,
Not in the Zoom.
Jorge Chang,
Not in the Zoom.
Nicola Cox,
Not in the Zoom.
Joel Simon,
Not in the Zoom.
Catherine O'Sullivan,
Not in the Zoom.
Doris Hughes.
Not in the Zoom.
I have Alexis Winters from Councilwoman Vicky Palladino's office.
Also not in the Zoom.
Eric Nielsen.
One moment. Yes, we have Eric Nielsen.
Okay, great. Mr. Nielsen, whenever you are ready.
Hey, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you for hanging in all day. Also, thank you to your I want to send thanks to your ASL interpreters for going at it this entire time. So my name is Eric. I'm a lifelong New Yorker, born and raised here, lived in Staten Island across Brooklyn and Queens. I'm also a homeowner here. After scripting and saving for a number of years, I've been able to afford to buy myself a home in Bushwick. Unlike a lot of the other homeowners that have been calling in this thing, I'm not really going to use my platform here to denigrate renters or homeless people or whatever other stuff. I'm actually going to go full-throated support in terms of all of City of Yes and urge you to pass the strongest form of it possible. My entire time living in New York City, I've always felt like housing costs have been a huge concern for myself and my friends. And it's just weighing on myself and my friends for all of our lives. And it's led to a lot of us feeling very unstable living here. So that's why I really want there to just be more housing built everywhere to address affordability concerns everywhere across the city. Also, I like living in New York City because of how dynamic it is. And I don't know how dynamic it's going to be when it's going to cost $5,000 a month to rent a one bedroom. I also support City of Yes because I want the city to remain dynamic, allow the city to remain interesting, and also the city has to be allowed to change in order to keep growing. A lot of other people in this call don't seem to want those changes to occur, but I just think it's just a part of living in New York City that things change and you have to just embrace it. Thank you for your time and have a great night.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Appreciate it. Let's call up Alexandra Brodsky on Zoom. While we do, I do want to note one of the last people to testify asked the question about MIH, observed that community boards were mostly against. In fact, very few were in favor of MIH at the time it was adopted. I think there were 9 community boards that were in favor of it, ZQA perhaps 6. And asked the question, what has it gotten us? Has it gotten us any affordable housing? And the answer is, of course, yes, it has, at least 7,000 units of affordable housing through MIH. So I just wanted to note that because the question was posed. Okay, let's go to Alexandra Brodsky.
Hi, thank you for staying so late tonight to hear from all of us. I'm Alexandra Brodsky. I live in Brooklyn, and I'm here to testify, hopefully briefly, in support of City of Yes for housing opportunity. I think the sort of straightforward problem is that at the root of our city's housing crisis is a housing shortage, and to solve it, we need a lot of new housing. And City of Yes is an elegant solution. By adding a little more housing in every neighborhood, we can get a lot of new housing without drastic changes to any one community. And you've heard a lot of criticism of the plan this evening, and some people have suggested reasonable tweaks, but what you haven't heard are serious alternatives to basic theory underlying City of Yes. To solve our housing shortage, we need to make it easier to build housing. And if we fail to act this year, we know what will happen. More gentrification, more displacement, more segregation, longer commutes from further away, a Manhattan that looks more and more like a gated community. We don't have to accept that reality. I urge you to vote yes on City of Yes and to back the strongest possible version.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for being here with us and for your testimony. We appreciate it. Okay. All right. Let's go to, and you'll let me know if any of these folks have previously been called, Matthew Denny's in Zoom. Let's go. Mr. Denny's, are you there? There you are. We can see you. But we can't hear you yet,
Able to
though.
unmute in Zoom.
Your microphone is showing that it's unmuted. It might be a connection issue.
We can probably go to the next speaker and then we'll try to.
Okay, Mr.
Matthew,
Denny's,
if you
we're
wanna
going to come back to you.
Try the audio again.
I think we've got a little bit of a connection issue, so our apologies, but we'll sort it out. Okay, Andrea Kretschmer.
I do not
Do we
see
have?
Andrea.
Do not see Andrea.
Okay, Daniel McCalla. Okay, Mr. McCalla.
I'm sorry, I do not see Mr. McCall on the Zoom. Oh, wait,
Okay.
one moment. Sorry, my mistake. One moment.
Promoting. Daniel, you should be able to unmute in Zoom.
Can you hear me now?
You can.
Yes.
Can you see me now?
We can't see you.
Hold on.
Okay, now we see the video.
All right.
Yes, wait, we saw you a second ago. There you go, we can see you now.
Hey, good
Welcome.
evening, Chairman
Good
Garatnik,
evening to you.
Commissioners. My name is Daniel McCalla. I'm testifying in opposition of City of Yes. I urge you to vote no. As my wife would say, it's good job, but it's kind of a little bit incomplete. I mean, I would support the conversions from office space to housing. I would find it very challenging in Midtown, knowing how much per square foot is for renters when it was office space. I'm very concerned about the demonization of one-family housing. You know, a lot of that is mostly a tax problem. Over the last at least 20 years, the affordable prices is really based on demand to be in the hot neighborhoods in New York. Like if you're in Fort Greene or the Upper West Side, you know, it comes down to you are allowing, the city was basically kind of having landlords, you have to charge rent for what your neighbor is charging once he goes up. That's been going on since the mid-90s. I don't, you know, realistically, developers are going to develop because you created a for-profit market. You know, I mean, the contextual zonings were created because the developers really abused zoning regulations. You know, they damaged homes. They would beat zoning applications by putting their foundations in at night. And then they would go to the Board of Standards and Appeals and basically say, well, I have a financial hardship. the Board of Standards and Appeals bases it like a court. You know, once you have precedent, you have to give the developer that precedent, you know, or the board could be sued. So, you know, I think this demonization of the low-income neighborhoods, it's not going to solve anything necessarily because we're still on theory. Once we approve in the zoning change, Department of Buildings has a completely different interpretation. You know, once you say yes, it's out of your hands. They have really no standards. They just give away the permits. It doesn't matter if it's landmarks or not, which is why, you know, I encourage a no vote, or at least keep working on it.
Time.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. McCullough. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. Okay. Let's go to Alexis Winters.
Alexis is not in the Zoom.
Okay. I have a Tony T by phone. Okay. Jean Han.
Promoting.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Commissioners. I've been on this call for quite a while. I'm very happy to speak. My name is Jean Han, and I'm a homeowner in Forest Hills, Queens. I'm opposed to the City of Yes, which on its face is an ill-conceived plan designed to strip away zoning decisions from local community boards because we are not a one-size-fits-all city. There's a saying by opportunists to never waste a good crisis. Well, the City of Yes is doing the same with the zoning proposal. Daylight, air, and open space are important quality of life issues, and tossing them to the wayside with City of Yes because we are in a housing quote-unquote crisis is akin to throwing the baby out with the bathwater because outzoning does not translate to or guarantee more affordable low-income housing. Instead, market and luxury developments get built, pushing low-income residents further and further out. We have all seen examples of this everywhere. If we are truly in a housing crisis, why isn't more being done to bring vacant units back on the market where it wouldn't put a strain on our aging infrastructure? Where are the plans for school buildings, hospitals, police departments, fire stations, road maintenance, and sanitation service to accompany these new buildings? Would developers be given freebies when our infrastructure is further overburdened? At the end of the day, we know it will all fall on the taxpayers who are already struggling with current inflation. I'm opposed to expansion of transit and town center zones, which would negatively affect the historic and contextual fabric of my low-density neighborhood, which my neighbors and I pay a hefty property tax premium to live in. I am opposed to permitting ADUs in basements and rear yard as of right. Cramped spaces are not quality of life for either the resident nor the neighbors, and again, brings up the question of infrastructure. Legalizing illegal basement conversions does not make a space any safer. I'm opposed to eliminating the parking requirement. Many families rely on cars to transport their children to and from school and activities and our elderly and disabled family members. To say that we don't need parking is discriminatory against those that live in transit deserts, which are pretty much everywhere outside of Manhattan high-density areas. As many here have already said, let the people control the housing process through decision making at the local community board level instead of a one-size-fits-all plan. I strongly urge the City Planning Commission to unanimously vote no to the City of Yes housing plan and go back to the drawing board. Some ideas there are not completely bad, but I feel like to pass it unanimously as it is would be a grave mistake to New York City residents. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go back to Matt Denny's, who I believe is back on with sound working.
Hopefully.
Well,
Can you hear me now?
Okay, we can. We can. We heard an odd screech that came through but I don't think that was you. It was okay, Mr. Denny's. Our apologies. We're ready for you. You have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, I'm Matthew Denny's, and I live in Flatbush, Brooklyn. And I volunteer with Open New York because the city is deep in a housing crisis, as you well know. High prices are only getting worse, and that's why I'd ask the commission to approve the full City of Yes for Housing Opportunity proposal with no additional conditions. And while this proposal isn't big enough to fix our entire housing shortage on its own, it is a really nice set of steps that are all going in the right direction. And all of the elements of this proposal are clear improvements to the zoning code and will allow a bit more housing to be built, including much needed affordable housing via the universal affordability preference. Beyond simply adding homes, the proposal has other positive impacts, such as the way that town center zoning will support small businesses that provide so much to our neighborhoods. Lifting parking mandates will also help by because the way that it currently works with the minimums that we have, that subsidizes cars and increases traffic, which we all know we have way too much of already in a city where less than half of households even have a car. Given the negative impacts of added parking, I'd love to see further restrictions or fees or something like that for parking in denser areas near multiple subway lines. But for now, removing these current mandates is an obvious first step. And moving on to transit-oriented development, the element in this proposal seems very limited to me, both in terms of it doesn't apply to many lots in the areas that are near transit, and the size of the buildings is pretty small, the buildings that would be newly allowed. And in fact, in my neighborhood of Flatbush, there are many historic apartment buildings that wouldn't be allowed to be newly built under this proposal because at 6 stories tall, even though they're very contextual to the three-story single-family homes in the area, they would still be too tall to be built under this proposal. Yeah, so to catch up with the number of homes that we need, we'll need to build a lot more, going beyond the status quo of the last century. And it makes a lot of sense to focus that around the transit system. So I'm glad to see transit-oriented development represented here. And while this is a small step, it's a good one, and I'm glad to see it. So I sincerely hope that the commission will approve this proposal and that our city will continue to move in this direction and do so quickly to meet the urgency of our housing crisis and to make sure New York is open to all who want to live here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Denny's. Let's move on to Linda Sun.
Linda is not in the Zoom.
Okay. Christopher Rizzo.
Christopher is not in the Zoom.
Matthew Shuffler.
Matthew is not in the Zoom.
Mark Anderson.
Promoting now.
Hello.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay. Hear me now, right?
We can.
Okay, great. My name is Mark Anderson. I am the president of the Wesley Improvement Society, which is a civic group on the north end of Staten Island. We represent about 10,000 people, and we strenuously oppose the proposal in its entirety. We don't see the need for more housing. Housing availability has exceeded housing need for the past 50 years, including recent years just before COVID. New York City lost about 600,000 residents in the last 3 years. So these numbers don't seem to make any sense. And, you're suggesting that there are residents coming back or coming from somewhere else, and we're just not seeing that. We're not believing this. We don't understand why the current zoning is not creating housing to the level that's needed. It seems to be working fine. On the North Shore of Staten Island, we estimate, according to current zoning, that we could have 2 to 3 times the amount of occupants as we currently have. And it's been very odd to hear that a lot of the folks in favor of this are touting the fact that this is a affordable housing when that's only an option in one small portion. And in Staten Island, it only seems to the proposal is only to apply that potentially in one tiny small little area. So that this is not affordable housing at all. Regarding the accessory dwelling units, we don't believe they're necessary. And actually, we believe that they would actually be creating a situation that's unsafe. You know, these spaces, I'm an architect, it's horrifying to think that this proposal would advocate for people to live in basements. And our experience is that the basements have been flooding in recent years for two reasons. One reason is any basement that has plumbing typically floods when it rains heavily. And this proposal would require that if people live in a basement, that it would require that they put plumbing in there. So that would create a very ominous situation. Also, groundwater. You know, this groundwater is. We have video of groundwater entering basement windows. I guess my time's up. Okay, so we strenuously oppose this proposal.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Okay, let's move on to Stephen Atanasio.
Stephen is not in the Zoom.
Anne Michalek.
Anne is not in the Zoom.
Nicholas Tapperts.
Nicholas is not in the Zoom.
Kathleen Cummings. Thought I called before.
Kathleen is not in the Zoom.
Okay, and is not in the room, not in the Zoom. Okay, Jimmy Yang.
Jimmy is not in the Zoom.
Bobby Barnett.
Promoting now.
Okay, Bobby Barnett.
Are you able to hear me?
We are.
Hello, good evening. My name is Bobby Barnett. I am a lifelong New Yorker, Manhattan resident, and community board 4 member. I have worked in housing policy issues for the better part of the past decade, and I am here to encourage the City Planning Commission to vote to approve the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity text amendment in full. I do not need to reiterate the meaningful human cost of our failure to create housing to match the existing need, nor the way in which failing to meaningfully update our zoning code in over 60 years has prevented the type of housing that New Yorkers increasingly need from being built. On a personal level, this lack of available housing has made it more challenging for myself and my peers to remain in one apartment for longer than just a few years, and ultimately to see a long-term future in our neighborhoods and the city overall. There is a lot to like about the many proposals in City of Yes, and I am particularly excited to see the reduction and elimination of the dwelling unit factor and universal affordability preference in creating more housing and more of the types of housing that our city needs. Eliminating the dwelling unit factor unlocks new housing opportunity for groups that are currently stuck in place. Creating shared housing can enable young people to afford to live without roommates and free up family-sized apartments in our neighborhoods. Shared housing models can also help more of those exiting shelter to move into permanent supportive housing. UAP would create new permanently rent stabilized units for those who are increasingly priced out of communities like mine. While I have heard concerns about allowing developers additional height as a part of UAP, I believe that the benefits of additional affordable units are well worth the modest additional height that these buildings may bring. Some here today may have derided the city's one-size-fits-all approach and the lack of input that communities will have in these proposals moving forward. As a community board member, I certainly appreciate the Department of City Planning's engagement on this. And while I encourage the CPC to consider substantive feedback to modify these proposals from those who are engaging here in good faith, easing the review process for the types of housing we want to see by performing that review up front has the power to address our dire housing shortage much more quickly. And as we're falling short literally hundreds of thousands of units today, we cannot afford to lose time in an effort to increase our supply of housing. Finally, while it is important to focus on proposals that would increase housing in all communities, I urge the CPC to ensure that its ultimate recommendation does not exempt one neighborhood or set of neighborhoods from their obligations to create housing. New York City's housing market is just that, it's a market. What affects one neighborhood has an impact on other communities and residents around the city. I thank you for your time and careful review of these proposals and hope you manage to sleep this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Barnett. Appreciate your addressing that the one size fits all and the comments about doing an individual community board by community board review or project by project review and the deleterious impact that would have on the ability to actually achieve any of the housing goals that we so desperately need to achieve. So thank you for that. Okay, let's go to Philip Wong on Zoom. He is there. Great. Mr. Wong, welcome. Mr. Wong, are you there?
We see the name. Phil, you should be able to unmute and Zoom.
Okay, Mr. Wong, we're going to move on. Let's move on to Michael Ronsky.
Michael's not in the Zoom.
Robert Schweitzer
Is not in the Zoom.
Deborah Waldorf,
Is not in the Zoom.
Yvonne Schweitzer,
Is not in the Zoom.
Marshall Plain,
Is not in the Zoom.
David Bowen Hernandez,
Is not in the Zoom.
Cassandra Warney,
Is not in the Zoom.
Liz Oakley.
Promoting now.
Okay. Ms. Oakley, welcome. Ms. Oakley, are you there?
Liz, you should be able to unmute and Zoom.
Okay. No sign. Esther Gimmelfarb.
Promoting now.
Okay, Ms. Gimmelfarb, you can hear me. You are up.
Mute, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go right ahead. You have the floor.
Thank you. I am originally from my family and I immigrated from the former USSR. I've lived in Rego Park, Queens for most of my life. I've lived in Pittsburgh during university and in Manhattan, but Rego Park has been home. I am a homeowner currently. And as a concerned member of the community, me and my neighbors and my relatives and everyone in my community beseech you to please reject the City of Yes housing proposal as it currently stands. While seemingly well-intentioned, the City of Yes housing opportunity proposal in its current form will not alleviate the shortage of affordable housing or make neighborhoods more environmentally friendly and resilient to climate change. On the contrary, it will further exacerbate our already overtaxed and overburdened aging drainage, sewage, and sanitation systems. City of Yes land use and rezoning proposals would allow construction of big apartment buildings with no requirement for parking. This would not have the supposedly desired effect of reducing cars, but will result in more congestion, aggravation, and resentment. The way to disincentivize people from driving is to fix mass transit, make it safe and efficient. People don't want to take the subway because it's not safe and they don't run on time. My neighborhoods, such as Rego Park, Forest Hills, and the surrounding areas, are prime targets for the city of Yes, as we are considered low density. However, I guess people have memory hold that during the pandemic, we had refrigerator trucks full of corpses at the local hospitals because we're so low density that our hospitals were inadequate. And have we forgotten in the last big storm, we had a huge flood and people literally drowned in basement apartments, and yet they want to make them legal and supersize this? And what about the safety aspect of having legalized basement apartments and cottages, or the, what do they call to make our garages and stuff? Yes, thank you. I can't imagine that would be very, has anyone consulted the fire department, the police department, and what that would entail for them? I'm sorry. The way to strengthen our beloved city and communities is to address the aging infrastructure with a scientific and methodical approach, not a one size fits all, and to take away local communities' voices and say. This is the city of Yes, again, as it currently is a carte blanche for unscrupulous real estate developers to rubber stamp the shortest path to maximizing their bottom line.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gilmore-Farb. I'm sorry, just to mute you after a few seconds over. Okay, let's go on to Caroline Donovan.
Caroline is not in the Zoom.
David Pecoraro.
Promoting to panelist.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello there. My name is David Pecoraro, and I'm a 64-year-old lifelong New Yorker and a Rosedale, Queens resident for the last 58 years. I also never miss an opportunity to vote. While I am not authorized to speak for either, I am the secretary of the Rosedale Civic Association and a member of Community Board 13 Queens. I listen to the universal opposition to the city of Yes from my neighbors, a community of predominantly African-American and Afro-Caribbean homeowners who are outraged by Mayor Adams calling zoning regs we support racism. I then joined with my colleagues on our community board who also heard their communities, and we unanimously voted no. No matter our ethnicity, we all chose to live in Eastern Queens. We didn't want to live in congested areas of our city. I respect the rights of the very few community boards to decide what is best for where they live to vote yes. I ask for the same respect for the majority of Queens of community boards who have voted no, including ours. Specifically, I believe that this is a gift from Mayor Adams to Rebney, and we voted no. The area is represented by community boards in opposition to this ill-conceived plan that fails to address the environmental impact on infrastructure already strained to the max. The lack of required parking fails to recognize the needs of those of us who live in mass transit wastelands. The proposal of half-mile transit zones from LIR stations that have been insufficient trains is excessive. A 1 or 2 block radius might be more reasonable. Paving over green space that can absorb rain in an era of increasing flooding is sheer madness. The City of Yes housing plan is so flawed that neighborhoods are investigating legislation to secede from the city. Please do not impose this where it is unwanted, or for a plan that we just don't support. We are not going to watch our community be destroyed to satisfy Manhattan realtors and other elites. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pecoraro. We appreciate your being with us at this late hour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go on to Claudia Levy.
Claudia is not in the Zoom.
Felicia Busto Frame.
Is not in the Zoom.
Jack Connors.
Is not in the Zoom.
Andrew Foss.
Is not in the Zoom.
Curtis Weatherford.
Is not in the Zoom.
Okay, Felicia, we just called her. Sherry Reisner.
Is not in the Zoom.
Maria De Innocentis, I think we heard from, didn't we? Yep. Faith Elliott.
Is not in the Zoom.
Sarah Jesselson.
Is not in the Zoom.
Jorge Romero.
Is not in the Zoom.
Alexis Winters twice. Mark Levine, we heard from. James Ballantyne.
Is not in the Zoom.
Dylan O'Hare.
Is not in the Zoom.
Reverend Thorbs.
Promoting to panelist.
Okay, Reverend. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello. We can
Hi.
hear you.
Good
Hiya.
evening. Good morning, almost.
Good evening and almost good morning.
Yes. Well, I won't take up a lot of time. I'm Reverend Thorbs. I am the chairperson of Community Board 12, which covers areas of Jamaica, Hollis, St. Albans, South Ozone Park, and Springfield Gardens. I've heard a lot tonight from so many different people. I guess I'm happy that I'm at the end. A few things that have already been said. No environmental impact statement. That's what's absolutely needed. No infrastructure considerations, sanitation, schools, water, and sewage lines. Parking is necessary, especially here in South Jamaica. We are a driving community. This would be destroying our neighborhood. This is not the answer for us. Out of 59 CBs, 175 meetings, that means only 3 meetings per CB board. Only 3. I still talk to people on the street that have no idea what City of Yes is about. CB12 currently has our downtown area that has been built up with apartments, and some of them are empty. Their rents are beginning at $3,000. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, for, I should have said this first, for even having this. And I agree with Ms. Vicky Palladino, but there's something else. From listening to this whole event from 10:30 this morning until now, it is clear that this is what should have happened before this has taken place, before anything was put pen to paper. These conversations would have helped with the City of Yes. And we wouldn't be asking for this to be done over if we had done this part first. Had these conversations, you all talking to us and to other folks that are in the industry, and we were threshing it out. This would have been far more productive if this was done first. The way it is, CB12 with the other CBs in Queens, we do not support the City of Yes. I will repeat it again. We do not support the City of Yes. This is not a cookie cutter situation. This is a community board by community board. We have been carrying the weight of shelters in our area. So to talk about affordable housing, we already know that it is not affordable. I already have complaints from people who have applied, and these apartments are not affordable. Our concerns are, you're talking about the new New Yorkers. Where are the people that were in our shelters before they got here? How did you move them out overnight? Where did they go? And with all this new housing that you all are talking about, will the people that were in the shelters first get first dibs? Will they be able to be placed first and not be stepped over, as it seems like they are being done here in the city? Thank
Time.
you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Reverend Thorbs. We appreciate your being with us at this late hour, and also for your careful consideration of the proposal. We know that it was a lot, and we appreciate you and the time you gave to it. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay. All right. Good night. Let's go on to Ann Coleman.
Anne is
Okay.
not in Zoom.
And I'm going to assume that Anne Marie Coleman is also not in the Zoom.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. Victoria Hillstom.
Not in the Zoom.
Will Davella.
Not in the Zoom.
Mark Jennings.
Not in the Zoom.
Daniel Fisher.
Promoting now.
Okay. Mr. Fisher, whenever you are promoted and ready, you have 3 minutes. Welcome.
Hello, I'm assuming you can see and hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. I'm tired. I'm sure you're tired, so I'll try to keep this a little quicker than I had planned for. My name is Daniel Fisher, and I live in Willingsburg. I moved to New York City for school about 8 years ago, and I've lived here as a renter ever since. I speak not only on behalf of myself, but for multiple friends who have had to leave the city due to our housing costs. And personally, I'm concerned over my ability to stay in the city long-term and start a family here, despite my desire to never leave. I've heard a lot of homeowner testimonials while waiting for my turn, and while I'm glad that they're able to benefit from housing security, that's a privilege that is becoming increasingly rare for New Yorkers. I'm more than happy to bring any longtime homeowners on an apartment hunting trip with me so they could see what it's like for those of us not fortunate enough to have been born in an earlier decade that had a saner housing market. I'm particularly concerned about climate change impacts facing our coastal city. New Yorkers have 1/3 the greenhouse gas footprint of the national average, and more housing means more New Yorkers, means less greenhouse gas emissions. Transit-oriented development is a no-brainer approach to leveraging our amazing transit system, and the removal of parking minimums is sorely needed in order to reduce unit costs and help shift mode share away from cars. I fully support the City Yes housing proposal in its complete form, and thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much for being with us. Okay, let's move on to Elena Schweitzer on Zoom.
Elena is not in the room.
Sam Midler.
Sam is not in the room.
Stephanie Fable.
Not in the Zoom.
Daniela Lombardo Sarkis.
Not in the Zoom.
Bill Bruno.
Not in the Zoom.
Corey Hannigan.
Not in the Zoom.
David Lawrence.
Not in the Zoom.
Indiana Porta. Okay.
One moment. Not in the Zoom. Oh, one moment. Indiana Porta is in the Zoom.
Hey, Ms. Porta. Whenever you are promoted and ready, you can go ahead and get started for 3 minutes. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Welcome. Pulling up. All right. So, hello, my name is Indiana Porta, and I work for the city and sit on my community board, but I testified today in my personal capacity, as you can imagine, at 11:56 p.m. I wanted to take this, opportunity right off the bat to ask the commission and the department if testimony offered today, written testimony, will be made publicly available. And if you can just provide some information as to when and where that will be posted. Along the same lines, I was curious if the oral testimony would be summarized like the October 2023 scoping meeting. I think there's like a summary of, kind of a quick recap of all of the oral testimony as well. So I was curious if that would be made publicly available. And then to the substantive proposals, which I will summarize since it is so late. I am not a land use specialist by any means. So I think that the best thing I can do, right, is maybe raise some of the questions that I'd love to hear more from the board about, right, and the commission. Specifically, for the universal affordability preference proposal, I am hearing differing things, right? It sounds like in the materials that were provided by DCP, that the 20% additional housing that would be required to be affordable, it's kind of spoken as like a given. Yes, 20% of the housing will be affordable. But then as other presenters have spoken, it seems like maybe there's some discretion and that it may have to do with, you know, like a percentage, right? If something was zoned for FAR 12, but they decided to build FAR 10 because of economic reasons, I think that was an example earlier tonight, that there would be fewer affordable housing units because the developer chose not to build, I guess, the full affordable housing percentage that they could. So just clarity on that. Is it a fixed percentage of the affordable housing? And I would encourage the commission, and if not, the council members, when they vote on this, to set a base minimum of the affordable units, right? I think 20% seems fair. So to remove that discretion if it exists. Let's see, I'm doing on timing, 30 seconds. Okay, very quickly. At the City Planning Commission meeting on July 8th, there was a question about what happens for areas that were recently rezoned. And so if a building had an FAR 6, you know, zoning, I guess, but they, through the community agreement, decided to build FAR 5, what happens now if that building has not yet been built? Can the developer go back to city planning and say, listen, I want to take part in this and in the affordable housing unit?
Time.
Thank you. And one last thing. I am a wheelchair user. I became a wheelchair user 2 years ago. And so to the extent that you can accessibility features, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's just let's address the process questions here about what's posted where, Madam Secretary.
To address the question on publishing testimony, we don't typically post it on the website. However, there will be a response to comments in the final environmental impact statement, and it is something that could be requested from the department as a record of the meeting. And then there will also be in the CPC report an overview of all the testimony and comments and written testimony received.
And YouTube.
Yes, and you can also watch the YouTube live stream. We'll have the video up on YouTube. I mean, that's a good watch. That's must see TV right there. As we officially tuned in. That's great. As we officially hit hour 14. Thank you very much, Ms. Porta. We appreciate your testimony. Let's move on to James Brossi, who does not appear to be with us here in the room. Is not on the Zoom, I assume?
No.
Pamela Wolf?
Promoting now.
Okay.
Here I am.
Okay. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning to you. This is way past my bedtime. First, I want to say, just for everybody's full disclosure, I am not a member of Open New York. I want to support the comments of Roberta Gelb, Sam Turvey, David Holoka, and a number of others. I have to say that Amy Gross is a tough act to follow. My name is Pamela Wolf, and I come before you as a resident of Chelsea, speaking from the heart of our community. I urge you to rethink the City of Yes Housing Opportunity Initiative. While it may wear the guise of good intentions, beneath the surface lie many flaws that could harm our city and its people. This proposal would have an extremely negative impact on Chelsea. It would compromise our housing quality. It allows for reduced standards such as smaller windows, setbacks, and no minimum unit sizes. These changes could lead to substantial living conditions. It could generate very cramped apartments. New Yorkers have fought tooth and nail for housing quality. The degradation of these hard-won standards is not just wrong, it's a betrayal of our collective struggle. Secondly, it is more important, and more importantly, the initiative's lack of mandatory affordable housing provisions is deeply troubling. Without these requirements, affluent neighborhoods like ours will see very little affordable housing development. This absence deepens economic segregation and limits housing options for low and middle income residents. It will encourage an already existing trend of demolition of naturally occurring affordable housing. In a city already torn by stark socioeconomic divides, we cannot afford policies that will widen these gaps. The proposal's failure to conduct community impact assessments is another glaring oversight. Without understanding the effects of new housing on existing infrastructure, such as hospital beds, school seats, parks, and senior centers, we risk overburdening our resources and diminishing the quality of life for all residents. The reduction of council members' powers is a critical issue. By converting many ULURP actions into discretionary certifications, this initiative diminishes local oversight and accountability. It silences the voices of elected officials and the communities they represent. This shift towards centralized decision-making undermines the democratic processes that are vital to balanced and fair urban development. The proposal also includes provisions for the transfer of development rights from landmarks, which could result in disproportionately large towers that overshadow and disrupt the character of our neighborhoods. May I beg for a few more minutes?
I'm very sorry, you cannot, not because we wouldn't be happy to hear from you longer. It's just that we have others who are still waiting, and it is after midnight and after 14 hours. So my apologies, but thank you for being with us at this late hour, and we heard you loud and clear. Okay, let me go to Gina Barone.
Gina is not in Zoom.
Phil Wong.
I do not see Phil Wong.
We have Phil. I think Phil is not accepting the promotion or might have stepped away.
Mr. Wong, you there? Okay. Elena Sicheva.
Promoting the panelists.
Good morning, Ms. Sicheva.
Good morning.
Good morning, welcome.
Good morning, Chair Garodnick and members of the Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to testify in favor of the City of Yes initiative. I also want to acknowledge all of the hard work of the city planning staff on this proposal and today, this evening, this morning at this hearing. My name is Elena Sicheva, and I'm a lifelong Brooklyn resident of over 30 years. I grew up in Mitchell-Lama housing in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and I currently rent in the Greenpoint neighborhood in Brooklyn CB1. And it would be my preference to stay and raise a family here in this great borough. My parents emigrated from the former Soviet Union and were able to remain in New York and work in the public service sector because of their access to affordable home ownership. This allowed me to have wonderful cultural, educational, and career opportunities. And I'm concerned that this is no longer a possibility for my generation. My friends and colleagues are being forced to leave the neighborhoods they love because of significant cost of living increases. This is especially true for young working class families with children. We are all well aware of the severe housing crisis in New York City, and I will not repeat the data that has been cited by previous speakers on low vacancy rates and skyrocketing rents. I'm here because I believe this proposal will provide much needed affordable housing for New Yorkers by creating permanent affordability through UAP, making parking optional instead of required, and the common sense solution of transit-oriented development. All of these solutions will help New Yorkers remain in the communities they love and will allow our great city to continue welcoming new residents. I urge the Commission to approve this proposal in the strongest form. We cannot afford to wait. Thank you for your time, and I commend you all for staying so late.
Great, thank you, and we appreciate your being here with us at this hour. Thanks again. Okay, all right, Raquel Lima is next.
Raquel is not in the Zoom.
How about Sunny Ing?
Sunny is not in the Zoom.
How about Lane Dernberger?
Lane is not in the Zoom.
Denise Fabiano?
Is a dial-in, providing access.
Denise, on Zoom, you should be able to push *6 to unmute your phone.
How are you this evening? I should say this morning.
Yes, we're hanging in. Welcome.
I can see that. I can see that. And I want to say thank you very much for all that you have done today and all that you have listened to today. I respect the need for housing and affordable housing in New York City. By far, the need is there, but I do not see how the City of Yes can enforce permanent affordability. If there was a way for you as the commission to be able to give some sort of way that it will only be used for affordable housing, then that would be one thing. But as for the 35 districts that have voted no, it is because we feel that there is going to be abuse of the system. And what you're asking us to do is to trust a mayor who is giving us an all or nothing with the City of Yes. I understand that the housing problem has been going on for years, but you cannot say that the migrant problem and over almost 200,000 illegal immigrants is not exacerbating the situation. And I've heard a lot of great things here about vacant low-income housing that can be used, programs to make home ownership affordable. And I do believe that those can be used, but I also believe that we need to make changes as well. 35 community boards have voted no, and 24 have voted yes. There are many areas where they are giving you clear access to come in and make the changes that you want to make and that you believe in, sir. And that gives the rest of us an opportunity to see how it'll go. Mr. Levine this morning said that he can create over 100,000 of these units for you. Well, I say have at it then. I say use those 100,000, and in a year or two, we'll check back with you. We'll look. I live in Howard Beach. I get water in my basement all the time. In 2 years, I'll check it out with you, and I'll see how many of these builders really did use it for affordable housing. How many of them did not ruin the already very shoddy infrastructure that we're left with, and the general happiness of the residents that have said yes to you. My take on it would be change the name of this to the City of Those That Said Yes, and the rest of us waiting to see if it works out so that we can do the same. I think that every New Yorker wants to be able to help the situation. We recognize the situation.
Time.
Okay, Ms. Fabiano, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Okay, looking for Alyssa Manfredonia in Zoom.
Alyssa is not in Zoom.
Okay, I have a Charles N.Y.
Promoting to panelist.
Okay.
Hello. Hello.
Oh.
We can hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. Hi, I'm blind. Sorry, I use assistive technology. Sorry about that. So I'm a blind person. I'm a member of Community Board 5. My thoughts are my own. My opinions are my own. I'm also on welfare, SSI, Medicaid, and food stamps. I'm concerned that not more is being done to help people with not only disabilities, but people on fixed incomes like SSI to improve their living situations. I'm in subsidized housing. I guess you could call it SRO. And there's no, I believe that we should try to help people who are impoverished to have some sort of better standard of living than just be stuck in an apartment that really isn't an apartment. It's more like a shoebox with no oven, just a hot plate and under the counter fridge to deal with. I do believe that people can suffer with environmental depression, and I do believe that people in my building do relapse because they're not given enough support and help. And I do think there should be a rethink about how we help people like myself in this welfare system. And I do believe that, unfortunately, I feel like there's not been enough outreach to people who are impoverished to be a part of the conversation. Not only be a part of the conversation, but why can't we be part of the whole design and give input onto what kind of housing we want, right? Because unfortunately, I feel like, and no offense, and I do apologize, I'm not trying to be rude, but I feel like there are those who have not struggled and not been through the welfare system who are making decisions on what they think people like myself should want from affordable housing, what they think someone like myself should need. And I feel like the voice is being not heard. So I really hope more could be done. I'm really pleased that something is being done, but I think more should be done. Unfortunately, I am opposed to this plan as it stands at the moment. I do feel like more outreach needs to be done. And if that could be done, that would be great. And, and it goes to show, unfortunately, on my community board, we have lobbyists from Open New York, and not one of those Open New York people have ever spoken to me about how they could help me to have a better standard of housing. But I do think this SRO style of housing is not great. I do believe it would be nice if people could have a one-bedroom apartment, because if someone came to visit me, when they open the door, they see my bed. I mean, that's unacceptable. It really should be the fact that someone comes in and I can take them into like a living room situation instead of, sorry, my time's running out. But anyway, I think you get what I mean. And thank you for all the hard work you're doing. And I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And I certainly, understand your point. There are some people who would prefer to live in a studio apartment. There are some people who would not like to live in a studio apartment. I think most importantly for the proposal, it is designed to enable the possibility of different types of units. So I certainly understand your perspective on that, and thank you for it. I believe we have heard from Lucy Coteen. Yes. Benjamin Wetzler.
It's not in the Zoom.
Andrew Magnus.
It's not in the Zoom.
I know we heard from Paul Di Benedetto, who read my book. Sally Ann Sinisgali.
Is not in the Zoom.
We heard from. Oh, okay. Yep, we heard from her, right? Joe McAllister.
Not in the Zoom.
Cormac McKay.
One moment. Promoting the panelist.
Great.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Ken.
Good evening, commissioners. Thanks very much for hanging on.
Good evening.
I've been here since the start. I'm a visitor and possible would-be future resident of New York, and I would like to support this proposal with a couple of add-on amendments to this proposal. Thank you for your time and consideration. As you may be aware, the practice of deliberately leaving property empty is a highly socially destructive practice and a scourge on the city. It is also a practice of market manipulation to limit availability, which drives up the price of property and rents. Office vacancy rates are expected to rise from the current 1 in 5 to 1 in 4 by 2026, according to Moody's. And vacant resident units probably could be much higher than the estimated 100,000 or 1.4 as reported. Until we have a highly regressive vacant property or vacant underutilized property tax or fine, this practice will continue. I propose that these fines or tax should at least be a minimum of $1 per square foot per day, or a minimum of 100% of the expected rent until reduced and occupied, to be added to this City of Yes proposal to prevent this practice of leaving residential, office, commercial buildings and land or sites deliberately empty, denying this much needed space for housing and visitor accommodation now and in the future. And yes, there should be some grace and consideration for minimums for open space, landscape gardens or community gardens. This could encourage rapid renovation and development of these sites and properties. We should also promote the practice of prefabrication and off-site construction methods, which should be the preference for all new construction and developments to allow for future-proofing and adaptability. Another proposal to this would be anyone who reports socially destructive practice of vacant property should get a commission for doing so, similar to the Citizens Air Complaint Programme. All sites, offices and commercial property should be converted to emergency residential accommodation or tourist visitor accommodation within 30 days of becoming vacant, with allowances of up to 90 days for refurbishment in a 15-year period. If buildings might not be suitable to become long-term residential units, they may be suitable to be used for short-stay tourist accommodation. This could free up the current short-term tourist accommodation that would be suitable for long-term accommodation. And this would qualify them for a 75% reduction of the fine until occupied. But
I'd
like to thank you for your time.
Thank you. We appreciate it very much. Thank you. Okay, Campbell Munn on Zoom.
Promoting
Actually, everybody's on Zoom at this point. Okay, Campbell Munn, welcome.
Good evening, and thank you to the commission. This is rather funny timing. I'm getting on the L train, so I guess in an indirect way, I'm grateful for Andrew Cuomo's installation of the cell service, which will hopefully be enough for me to testify this evening. My name is Campbell Munn, and I am a 5-year resident of the East Village, member of Community Board 3. I serve there on the Land Use Committee, and I'm here tonight to support City of Yes without conditions. I will also add that I am here testifying strictly in a personal capacity as I work for the New York City Economic Development Corporation. Simply put, I pay too much for housing, as do countless New Yorkers. City of Yes is a generational proposal that presents the opportunity to realize critical reforms within New York City's zoning code. These reforms are long overdue, citywide and for CB3. Community Board 3 has done more than its part in providing new housing, affordable and market rate, as well as shelter housing in the last decade. The prospect of a truly citywide proposal, one that sees the burdens and, may I make clear, the benefits of new housing production equally distributed across the city in a way that has not been possible since the misguided adoption of the mid-century urban renewal era 1961 zoning code. These effects are borne out every day as New Yorkers, and I am sad to say many of whom are my friends, are forced to leave New York City in light of the city's lowest vacancy rate in its history. I urge, implore even, the Commission and the City Council to move forward with City of Yes for housing opportunity. Countless New Yorkers like myself are in desperate need of more housing in every neighborhood, more affordable housing in every neighborhood, as will be borne out under critical proposals like the Universal Affordability Preference, which has the opportunity to realize truly generational and transformative effects, specifically within Community Board 3. I, like so many others, have testified in support of this proposal. I'm concerned about my future in New York City. Generations of my family have lived here, and to think that I would be unable to do the same disheartens me. So in closing, thank you to the Commission for staying this late. It's the morning now, to hear comments both in support and in opposition. And I wait with bated breath for the relief that I and so many other New Yorkers and our wallets are crying out for. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to Jack Connors.
Jack is not in Zoom.
Carol Donovan.
Carol is not in Zoom.
Jack is in the Zoom.
Jack is there. Jack Connors, okay.
I'm here. Hello.
Hello there. Welcome.
Thank you. And good morning.
Good morning.
Chair Garodnick and members of the City Planning Commission, thank you for the opportunity to comment on the proposed City of Yes for Housing Opportunity Citywide Zoning Text Amendment. I'm Jack Connors, Research and Communications Associate at the Permanent Citizens Advisory Committee to the MTA. As a voice for MTA riders since 1981, PCAC researches issues, recommends viable solution, and advocates on behalf of the region's subway, bus, and Staten Island Railway riders and LIRR Metro North Railroad commuters. In service of that mission, we strongly support the framework set forth by Mayor Adams, Commissioner Garodnick, pardon me, it's late, and their staffs in the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity proposal. New York City's affordable housing crisis hurts MTA riders who spend on average 20 minutes more a day in transit than residents of peer cities like Seattle and San Francisco, despite the fact that we in New York have the most expansive public transportation network in North America. According to the new New York panel report released in December of 2023, this burden falls disproportionately on Black New Yorkers, whose commutes averaged 47 minutes, 23% longer than the 38-minute commute of white New Yorkers' average commute. City of Yes for Housing Opportunity addresses these glaring inequities by returning to the transit-focused housing policies that enabled our rail network's expansion in the early 20th century. During that time, policies included in the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity, such as accessory dwelling units, transit-oriented development, and the absence of parking mandates were known by a different name: common sense. Unfortunately, to the detriment of riders in the densest city in the nation, the close tie between new housing and transit has been broken in many neighborhoods in recent decades. Getting back to basics will help the city and the MTA as both continue to recover from pandemic ridership losses by bringing riders closer to stations, thereby encouraging and improving ridership and simultaneously fare revenue. The City of Yes for Housing Opportunity proposals have the potential to improve the lives and experiences of current and future transit riders around the 5 boroughs and across the region, particularly when combined with other ongoing initiatives. We call on the city to act decisively to fulfill the streets plan mandate of 150 miles of new bus lanes, and busways by the end of 2025, expanding zoning for accessibility citywide, and to bus improvements and expanding fares so that low-income New Yorkers can afford to ride. We appreciate the mayor and speaker for raising the eligibility for the fares program to 145% of the federal poverty level in this year's city budget, but continue to call for further expansion to 200% and to the commuter railroads, which better reflects the high cost of living in NYC, as well as peer cities with similar programs. As billions of dollars of public money are invested to enhance transit, we must ensure that exclusionary zoning policies do not put this infrastructure out of reach to the working New Yorkers who stand to benefit the most. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Have a good night, everyone.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much for being with us at this hour. Okay, let's move on. Carol Donovan? No. Amit Solomon, I think I called earlier, but not there. Luana Green, Rob Sayor, Catherine Murawski. Okay, while you promote Ms. Murawski, just a quick public service announcement. We are getting close to the end. So, if you are within the sound of my voice and wish to be heard, on this subject, this is your moment to sign up. We committed to stay until all voices that wanted to be heard were heard. So we're getting close to the end. We're getting close to that last opportunity. All right, let's go to Ms. Morawski.
I'm here.
Are you there? Hello, welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I've been waiting here since, I don't know, 1:30 in the afternoon, and then I finally got on the right way. So thank you guys for staying on. Okay, I'm the vice president of the Liberty Park Homeowners Association, and I don't have my speech in front of me. I submitted it to you. But basically,
Okay.
But basically, you could read it. I mean, I represent 500 homes, Dutch colonial homes, and 700 families, and we Community Board 5, where I live, all oppose the city of Yes. Our two-family houses are very small. We have our basement, they're not even really apartments. We were told by Community Board 5 that they're cellars. It would be flood. They're not flood or fireproof. They would be very dangerous because the only way out is by the back door. What else can I tell you really quickly? I'm sorry, I don't have the speech in front of me. I really believe the commission should be be consulted by mechanical engineers because the wiring, if a landlord's very hard for them to not hire your rent because of the meter, the water meter going up and all the expenses going up. Con Edison would have to hire their grid of energy. Otherwise, we could have a major blackout in New York City next year. Overdevelopment is a big problem. So that's why I oppose it, but I really sympathize with people who need housing. So if there is a solution and with existing housing that is already there for the people who need it, I would be for it for them. So there are certain areas in New York City that should get it. But in Queens, it's not good for us. It's not good for us in many areas of Queens.
Okay, we got it, and we'll look forward to reading your written testimony. So
Yeah,
thank you for being with us.
That was the majority of it.
We gotcha. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, let me call Stan Liao. Mr. Liao.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, so it's very late. I'm sure we would all like to go to sleep soon. But yeah, I'd just like to say I strongly support the City of Yes with no amendments. I've been a New Yorker for basically my entire adult life. I love this city. Rent is just extremely expensive here. A lot of my friends who would like to stay are moved to other places. And then, we are in an immense housing crisis right now, and we just urgently need to build more housing of all kinds. And yeah, I fully support and endorse the City of Yes plan. And I look forward to more affordable housing being built in this great city.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Okay. Now I'm looking for an RES. RES.
Promoting to panelist.
Okay. Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Hi, good evening. I know it's super late, so I'll try to be quick, and I think I'll be trying to skip a lot of things that other people have said, but I will echo that I agree um, that this proposal, as I've read it and as I understand it, does not guarantee affordable housing. And I've lived in New York my entire life. I was born and raised in New York and have only left for school and grad school. And I work as a structural engineer with existing buildings, preserving and adaptive reuse for existing buildings. So I think I have a little bit of sense of like what's going on in New York in terms of buildings. Yeah, so I'd like to echo other people when they say I don't see from my lived experience that changes like this have brought about affordable housing. In fact, I see the opposite, where neighborhoods where a lot of development has been encouraged, like Williamsburg, Bed-Stuy, Long Island City, has actually become extremely unaffordable, whereas neighborhoods that don't have these same pushes are the most affordable neighborhoods, with individual homeowners being the most affordable option if you have 2-family, 3-family homes. So that's my experience in New York, and that's what I see. And I fear that pushing a lot of these changes at this large one-size-fits-all scale is just going to create more housing that is unaffordable. And as a young person in New York, I don't see a means and a pathway for me to live an affordable life through some of these expensive luxury apartments, and I don't see a pathway to ownership. I'd also like to say that I agree that on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis, these things have different levels of impacts and should be studied specifically to neighborhoods. And I know that that's a large undertaking, but this is a large ask. So I think it's worth putting the time and care and consulting different neighborhoods to see where their needs can be. I live in a neighborhood where most people do not have access to the train. So a lot of the buildings that have gone up have eliminated parking, and people in my neighborhood drive around for 1 hour trying to find parking, and a parking space in some of these new buildings sells for $90,000. So I also, again, don't see that correlation where we say that developers will just put it in where it's needed, because I've not experienced that in my neighborhood. And at the same time, I don't see the same increases to infrastructure and resources and green spaces. And I also read that in the environmental impact statement that they anticipate a deduction to green spaces, sunlight, and shared community spaces. So I think that should be addressed before we introduce all of this new housing. We should figure out how we're going to update the infrastructure and the resources and the green spaces to the community. Yeah, and I think there are other means like not voting up rent stabilization increases, which was recently passed, that we can figure this out. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, let's go to Claire Beckman. Do we have Claire Beckman?
Claire's not in the Zoom.
Bob Martin? Okay.
Voting to panelists.
Great.
Hello? Hello?
Hi there, we can hear you.
Hello, this is Bob Martin from Flatbush. I just came off work from McDonald's. It closed at 11 o'clock today. So I'm here to show my opposition to the city of Yes. I am a working poor man that works at McDonald's. I cannot afford the city of Yes. I make $20,000 a year. I was doing some research, and I see the rules say that you have to make 80% AMI to be able to live in the city of Yes. I cannot afford that. I make $20,000 a year. I don't make $89,000 a year. I oppose this. It's not gonna affect me, Bob Martin. It's not gonna affect a poor person like me. It will never affect a poor person like me, everybody. Now, I heard that there's a few organizations that's pushing for the displacement of me, Bob Martin, like Open Plans and Open New York for All and Tri-State and the Riders Alliance and Transportation Alternatives. Why are you want to displace me, Bob Martin? Why do you want to place the Jamaican man from Flatbush? I see the new developments in my town. I try to apply via Housing Connect, SPD. I can't get approved because I don't make enough money. I don't make enough. My credit is good. My credit is 700 points. I can't get an apartment because I make $20,000 a year. How will the city of yes affect me when I make good credit in New York City, but I still can't get an apartment because I make $20,000 a year? I live in the 42nd district. I live in the 45th district, Mrs. Farrah Lewis district. Walking home now in the dangerous area of Flatbush. I can't afford anything in Miss Farrah Lewis district. I can't afford anything in our district. You have to make $100,000 a year to live in a new apartment by yourself in her district. I made $20,000. I had to live with a roommate. I had to live in a little room. This is a bad plan in New York City. This will never benefit the poor. This will only benefit the rich, the wealthy. I am not wealthy. Majority of us in New York City are not wealthy. We're poor. We work it poor. I work 2 jobs. I work McDonald's, and then tomorrow I'm working non-union construction. I need a union job. Mr. Daniel, can you help me out with that? Can you give me some directions of how to get a union job so I can make enough money to get an apartment in the city? Yes. Yes, Mr. Dan, please. But this is the truth, everybody. This is a bad plan in New York City. We have to oppose the city of yes. I heard it this afternoon when I was at work. Somebody said the city a mess. This is a mess. This is a dirty job. This is garbage. I clean for McDonald's. This need to be cleaned up. This shouldn't be going down. So thank you, Mr. Daniel. I know you have to go home. Please stay safe. Have a nice night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, let me go next to Jax Dolly. Salinas Miranda. I'm sorry, did you? Jax is not there. Salinas Miranda is. Yes?
Promoting the panelists.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear? Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay. Please stop resting on the words affordable housing as a solution to solve homelessness. The low income and the very low income are not included in this housing proposal. Let's be real. City of Yes is a plan to service private developers. This will not solve the homeless crisis. That's what we have, is a homeless crisis, not a housing crisis. Height restrictions should always exist. Why not include the constituents in the process to participate in the decisions of their own community? Private developers abusing their power, such as related companies, owners of Hudson Yard, who want to demolish our Fulton, Elliott, and Chelsea houses under the guise of resident engagement and a false narrative that our buildings are deplorable and falling apart. NYCHA has purposely neglected our buildings, but they are strong, solid, and well-built, which only need maintenance and repairs. They want to change the zoning to double the height and increase the population and change the aesthetics of our tranquil and cozy community. We have open space and abundance of trees. The elderly, the sick, disabled, and the mental well-being of the tenants is not being taken into account. We will be sacrificed to meet up to the City of Yes proposal. Elected officials all going along with this demolition or to service private developers. We are a capitalist society, but a democracy first. Protect our city. We cannot withstand so much more weight. We are at risk now. Please stop debilitating New York City. Keep our height limits and no rezoning of Fulton, Elliott, and Chelsea. No demolition. What the mayor needs to do is put a rent cap on all housing, 30, 40% for higher income earners and hard working class. And these tiny boxed-in apartments, it's a crime to pay so much money. The mayor should lay out a rent control plan. It's a reasonable solution. No to City of Yes. And thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Before I go to our what I know to be a final couple, let me just run back through some folks who did not respond to us before, make sure they are not present. Jeffrey Thomas.
We have Jeffrey
Mr. Thomas
in the Zoom.
Okay.
Jeffrey, you should be able to unmute. Jeffrey Thomas, you should be able to unmute in Zoom.
I see that his microphone is on. It may be a connection issue on his side.
Okay, I'll just give it a couple more seconds here, and then we will pull up one of the others.
Jeffrey, you should be able to unmute in Zoom. It appears your microphone's on. Okay.
This is going to be our final chance for you, Mr. Thomas, because we're about to close in a sec.
He's rejoined as a panelist.
Mr. Thomas, are you there?
Jeffrey, we can see it. Oh, we see the microphone. You should be able to unmute.
I went already. I'm sorry it took me a time to rejoin, but I went very early on. Thank you, though.
Oh, okay. Great. So welcome back. Nice to hear from you again, and we'll spare you the second round. Thank you. Hope you have a good good morning, good evening. Okay, Bob Kelly.
Bob, you should be able to unmute in Zoom.
And while we're trying to promote Bob Kelly, again, reminder for anybody who wishes to testify on this item, time is now 12:45 a.m. You are welcome to join us even now.
Here's Bob has declined to be promoted.
Bob has declined. Okay, how about Michelle Delaus?
Unable to unmute
Okay.
or promote.
Okay, how about Phil Wong?
Phil, you should be able to unmute in Zoom.
Okay, how about Liz Oakley?
Liz, you should be able to unmute in Zoom. Bob Kelly, Phil Wong, Liz Oakley, you should be able to unmute in Zoom.
Okay, all right, we gave it a shot. All right, now let's go to Ryder Kessler.
We're promoting.
Hi there, can you all hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you for the Herculean work you all have been doing all day. I'll try to be brief. My name's Ryder Kessler. I live in the West Village. I'm a member of CB2 Manhattan, but I'm speaking just for myself. I was born just down the street at St. Vincent's Hospital. I've lived in this neighborhood for almost 40 years. And that's because my family basically won the lottery. My parents bought an apartment about 45 years ago that now would be far out of reach in price for them or for me. What was once affordable housing in this community is now luxury. And that's a function of the fact that we have not created enough homes to keep up with population growth and job growth. And that is a status quo that we must break. We are stuck in a 60-plus-year-old zoning regime, and that status quo is what is leading to the crisis we are all feeling, to the 1.4% vacancy rate, to average rents in Manhattan that are over $5,000, to rents rising 7 times faster than wages, to 100,000 New Yorkers sleeping in shelter, to 9% of the city's Black population lost over the last 20 years to displacement. We know that we need to build affordable housing, income-restricted housing, but we are not just facing a crisis of affordable housing, but a crisis of housing affordability. And to address that crisis, we must add housing of all types all across the city. Frankly, the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity is necessary, but it is not sufficient. We must do much more to address this crisis and make New York a place where folks like my parents could live today, where people who are fleeing other parts of the country or the world for a place like New York where they can live their full identity and find belonging and find opportunity can have that once again. So I urge approval of City of Yes for Housing Opportunity in its strongest possible form to address the affordability crisis, but also to promote the dense, walkable neighborhoods that are our superpower in fighting climate change, which is also an existential threat to the city over the long term. If we don't make the city affordable, equitable, sustainable, we will lose the vitality that has made New York special over hundreds of years. And it is that, not the current built environment, the current look or feel of any particular street, that is New York's promise. So let's keep it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Last call for anyone wishing to testify. I have one last person on my list. Anybody else? Final call? Okay, this will be it. Let me call Sunny Ng.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Good evening. Good evening, commissioners, or good morning, rather. Thank you for staying up with me. My name is Sunny Ng, and I've been a renter in North Brooklyn for over 10 years. For anyone around my age or younger, and I'm not even that young, who rents, we know how expensive and how annoying it is to find housing. I know people on here talk a big game about we only need more affordable housing. While we certainly need that, we need all kinds of housing, affordable and market rate, because everyone is suffering in this market, not just those in the qualifying income bands. I'm really excited about the City of Yes for Housing Opportunity Initiative, and I hope the commission approves this proposal as is. This housing crisis is very real, and this initiative will help in adding much needed housing stock to the city. While each of the proposals has their own merits, the one I'm most excited about is lifting parking minimums. For a city with the best world-class public transit in the whole country, it's ridiculous that we have any provisions to require parking in the first place. This is especially absurd for transit-rich neighborhoods like the one I'm currently living in right now. Parking is not free, and it is a form of subsidy provided to those to less than half of all households in this city that drive. That cost is passed on to renters and owners who may not need the space. Removing parking minimums doesn't mean the city doesn't allow parking spaces to be built, as much as I wish that was true. It just allows the market to figure out how much parking is actually needed. The bottom line is developers should not be forced to be building on-site parking if it doesn't make sense for the neighborhood. Not to mention that densification and reducing car dependency is our city's best strategy to reduce our carbon footprint and to fight climate change. This proposal moves us in the right direction from this outdated policy, and I fully support it. And thank you for your time, and thank you for staying up with me.
Great. We stayed up to be able to hear your testimony, Mr. Ng. We appreciate your being here with us. Thank you. Okay. That's the final word for today. Before I just close this out, just want to see if there are any comments from commissioners. Okay. With that, let me just thank everybody for sticking with us through a record-length City Planning Commission hearing. By our count, we heard from over 200 speakers today. Clearly, this is an important issue for New Yorkers across the board, and we on the Commission have a lot to consider in the coming weeks as we think about our votes and potential modifications. I want to thank the staff of the Department of City Planning for being here early, and late. And of course, to the members of the Commission, incredible stamina, really great job today all around. And I have weighed in throughout the day, so indulge me for 60 more seconds to correct the record, because I think that it's important to have a fact-based discussion here. And here are just a couple of facts. We have a deep housing crisis, in large part because we do not have enough housing. The most recent housing vacancy survey conducted by the U.S. Census Bureau and our partners at HPD is a top quality survey, unmatched in the country, and it showed a 1.4% vacancy rate last year, the lowest since 1968. We can also see the impacts of this shortage every day. Anybody who has looked for housing recently can tell you it is too rare, and what is available is too expensive. Employers cannot hire because there's not enough housing for potential employees, and of course, far too many New Yorkers sleep in shelters or on the street each night. Evidence from across the country and world, as well as the broad academic consensus, shows that more housing of all types is necessary to address this crisis, including affordable and market rate housing. In the face of this crisis, we have proposed City of Yes for Housing Opportunity with the goal of creating a little more housing in every neighborhood. When every neighborhood adds a little housing, together it can make a big difference in solving our housing crisis. So we will discuss how to exactly achieve that goal over the next few months. We've heard a lot of ideas today from those of us who want to go bigger, to those of us who want us to limit our changes to 1 or 2 pilot neighborhoods. But one thing should be clear to everyone at this point: inaction is not an option. And our solutions must be based on specifics, in specifics. That's our job as commissioners. As I said a number of times today, we heard some objections that are not based in the actual proposal. The Department of City Planning team is available to answer any questions that commissioners have about these specifics and hopefully to clear up any confusion that may exist from today. And I encourage any members of the public who are still watching to find a number of materials on our website at nyc.gov/yes housing opportunity, from an illustrated guide to the annotated zoning text itself. So also, we are now well past midnight. July 10th became July 11th, and I will note that July 11th is a very special occasion because our incredible and distinguished housing director, John Mangin, it's his birthday on July 11th. So just join me in wishing John a very happy birthday with appreciation to him for everything that he and his team did to get us to today. So thank you, John, and happy birthday. And with that, at long last, let us adjourn this meeting. Good night. I'm sorry, some announcements. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry, I have to announce that the record will remain open on this item to collect comments, written testimony on the draft environmental impact statement until July 22nd at 5 p.m. And just a public information blurb. For those of you who are unable to or did not wish to testify, you can submit written testimony on this NYC Engage, the DC website, or by mailing your comments to City Planning Commission, Calendar Information Office, 120 Broadway, 31st floor, New York, New York, 10271. Sorry.
Great. And with that, we are officially done. Good evening, good morning, and we are adjourned.
The time is 12:55 a.m.